Hello, everyone. Welcome to another version of CrossTalk. I'm Kat Leigh, your host, with Stu Rideout. And as always, our intrepid producer, Elizabeth Holthouse, is making everything possible. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Stu, how you doing, buddy?
Good morning, all. Thank you for having me on your show. This is awesome.
I hope so.
Yeah.
A conversation with you is always awesome, but I'm
Oh,
hoping that
thank
the
you.
show is awesome. So there we go. That just for clarification.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna be awesome.
Well, it'll be something. I'm going to put this disclaimer out right now. Stu requested to record at ridiculous 30 in the morning. So mornings and I don't get along well, so I have my coffee and we are good to go.
You are talking to a kindred spirit.
Oh my goodness. But it worked better for all the schedules because when we really wanted to, nobody else was available. Anyway.
No.
Oh my goodness. My goodness, my goodness, my goodness gracious. So, Stu,
Yes, ma'am.
my first question and my regular question for everyone is tell me the story. How did you get involved in the worship ministry? What did
Like
God?
Star Wars, we're gonna that kind of starts in the middle of the story, but we'll start there and then we'll work in probably both directions. I think that's how they wrote Star
Yeah.
Wars.
Yeah,
Um,
let's do that.
Not that I'm Star Wars and or Han Solo. Not that anybody's ever seen me and Han Solo in the same room together, but anyway. So yeah, I gotcha. So um, how did I get involved with it? Good question.
Thank you.
Here and there, I've been involved with. I've been involved with bands and events. I guess the best way to describe it. Probably the first of it starts out with the youth group. We had a youth group years ago in Leicester, Massachusetts, and we decided we'd bring some bands in from time to time. So we did that. And the youth group kind of aged out. I guess probably the short story. The youth group aged out. We had a great high school group, and they filtered through the years. They came, they went, they came, they went until we get to a place in the church, and that would reflect on the community because the kids bring the kids in from school and so on and so forth. We got to the place where we had all our high school kids just aging out, going to college. We had two left, and they were going to college or what have you the next year. And below them or behind them were the little bitty kids in, elementary school, young elementary school kids. So we had no youth group at that point. It just kind of eased out. Um, One of my former youth group kids knew that I had been involved in a coffee house many years prior and said, "Hey, let's do a coffee house." He really didn't, I don't think he had a concept of what it was or what it could be. And I'd seen several different coffee houses over the years. And I've kind of formulated something in my head to say, well, this is what it could be. This is what it might look like. We had the space, so that's where we started to get into it. My wife was involved in a music ministry, Sunshine. It was really four women, three vocalists and a pianist. That kind of morphed from time to time. There was a guitarist, there was another pianist, but they would gig out as well, and I would support them. So that pretty much is that. We started Carpenter's Workshop Coffee House in September. It was Labor Day weekend, September 1986. Um, we started with my brother's play ministry that Lucille and I had been involved with for years. We weren't at that point, but we started with his play ministry as the opening act and put 100 people in a 24 by 36 space. We had no furniture, and we had opened the place up. The paint was still drying on the walls. We had really worked very hard on the interior space to get it ready, a lot of us. And it was just came together for that night. The sign was being hung out front. I mean, it was right down to the wire. We had chosen, yeah, we had chosen this date and advertised and all, and here we are. So we borrowed a bunch of chairs from the church, set them up. The team performed, and it was a great success. we moved into the next following weeks with different bands and acts, some of which were musicians from the team ministry. Um, there's an old joke used to be an old joke. If you were in a space anywhere in Massachusetts, the old joke was, please stand up if you are not in the team ministries. And, and it was true. I mean, they had over 1,000 performances, and my brother could tell you, but I have no idea how many people were involved throughout the years. But an average team performance would rely on about 24 people to put the production on.
Mm,
So you do this over um, how many decades? I couldn't even tell you right now. I mean, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Um, that's how many people are involved in it. So there were a lot of musicians to draw from, and of course, musicians know musicians know musicians. It's like a hall of mirrors. So once you start getting to know people like y'all, then you get to learn with George Tiff. I met you through George. Um, you meet other people, and so on and so forth, and so
yeah.
your base expands.
Yeah.
And that's the start of Carpenter's Workshop Coffee House. That predates you. We moved to Florida for a decade, came back because we believe God was calling us back to a coffee house ministry, and we had confirmation, so we moved back. That was interesting. Oddly enough, we opened up Cafe Condios about the same time in September of 2012. I think I would meet you in 2012 or 2013, right thereabouts.
Okay.
Um, and again, we had to kind of start from scratch a little bit. A lot of the other older musicians and bands had gone off to have kids or careers or both. There was some overlap, and that was helpful. And then we met some more people. And once again, once we started to gain our footing, our first year was a little shaky, and then we got off the ground with it. God was good. God is in all of this. If He isn't, there's no point in doing it. So.
Amen.
So that's kind of what Cafe Con Dios morphed into. We were losing our space, and that morphed into Cafe at the Mill.
Okay.
This is kind of a God thing. So we are really struggling to find a space. We don't really know what we're going to do at this point. I'm not really sure where God's leading us. We so I'm going to go down and help. I'm going to help a church in Worcester um, get ready for a big event we're going to have up on Vernon Hill, Living Word Church. And I said, well, maybe I'll talk to the pastor down there today and see about a space. He's got a lot of space in the church. Maybe we can rent a space or they'll lend us a space for a night a week and do a coffee house because they don't have one going.
Mm.
And so I was going to go talk to him. I'm literally walking out the door when Pastor Ed from the Mill Church calls. We have a somewhat brief conversation, as brief as a conversation like that can be. And he spoke of his struggles trying to keep it running, and I spoke of our struggles with trying to find a place. And Pastor Ed kind of said, "Well, wouldn't it be great if we merged?" And I said, "Yeah, that would work really well. That'd be great." So we all went home and prayed about it. Then we met all as a team, and then we went back home and prayed about it. And we set a tentative date for the first full Friday in January. If in fact God was leading us to do this. But we set the date just to have a placeholder. And so that first January, we opened with Raging Grace at Cafe at the Mill. And they're still running. They've been running for years. We didn't start it and we didn't end it. We just simply came on board and brought it along as best we could, kept it going, and brought it through COVID, which I will say we did do that, and God was with us in that, but we did do that. That was a um, frustrating time.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. It was a frustrating time. It was fruitful. A lot of faithful musicians, a lot of people who understood the problem, understood the vision, to which I'm always grateful for that. I'll always be grateful for that. But came on board and helped us out with that. And so we did remote. We did live remotes from there with nobody in the audience but the staff. And that's tough as a musician, as you know. It's tough as an MC. You look out, go, hello, tap, 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 microphone. Is this thing on? Is this an audience for oil painting? Or have
Mm.
no idea who you're talking to if you're talking to anybody. And it's tough. And the band goes on, they play, and they put their heart into it, even though there's 5 of us in the room.
Yeah.
So that, I guess, wraps up. That's the nutshell of. Excuse me, I'm battling off a cold, folks. That's it in the nutshell, as to how I get into or we get into this. I had sung with a band for 2 or 3 times at a coffee house back in the '70s when I was first became a Christian. But we were just just a bunch of friends with guitars and a place somebody would stand to listen to us. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Okay. So that right there. That right there. So this is why I love doing this kind of format because you say these little things. So just in case everyone see this is also my greenness as a host.
That's all right.
Um just in case everyone didn't pick up on the fact that Stu is a coffee house coordinator rather than a an active musician. Um, that is how we met. Um, but in all the years that we've known each other, and we've known each other, like you said, since 2012, so we're going on the 13 years here. Um, I never knew that you sang with a band.
Well, that'd be overstating it a
Expand
lot.
that.
Um, it would be overstating it a lot. I think that we call ourselves Born Again. There was like 4 or 5 of us. Um, none of us were professional. I mean, we could sing, I
Well, you don't
guess,
have
and
to be a
play and
professional to start
carry the
playing.
tune. We did basically the kind of stuff you would hear back then for contemporary worship. Played at Lost and Found Coffee House. That's the memory I have. That's the best memory I have. Um, and that was in its waning years. But yeah, we did do that. I guess I had nobody else to play. I said, hey, let's let these characters get up on the stage, and let's try not to stink to join up. And you know, people ask, well, why don't you? Let me back up. I met my wife at a New Year's Eve party, and a friend of mine and I used to kind of just jam. She played guitar and sang, a beautiful voice, and
And
I
I
sang.
didn't know that either, that Lucille was in a group.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. So for New Year's Eve, Janet and I are doing. We kind of gotten into the Woody Guthrie. Um, Arlo Guthrie had covered a lot of his dad's stuff, and so we'd kind of gotten into that and did some of that. Of course, we did City of New Orleans. So we're singing and playing, and then decided to do the entire Alice's Restaurant, which I used to know by heart. Um, she still fell in love with me after all of that. I cannot understand what she was thinking because she's not tone deaf. But anyway, be that as it may. Um, so yeah, we met that New Year's Eve, and after all that, but that was just again, this woman Janet and I would just impromptu pick up a guitar someplace or get together and just jam, even jam in the car sometimes, you know, just for fun. I'm going to break for a second. Again, I'm battling a cold off. Give me 1 second.
No,
Sorry.
you're fine.
So yeah, that was pretty much that. Lucille was in a group, and she's got a beautiful voice. I tried to get her to sing in the choir or something, or worship team, I guess now at church.
Hmm.
So talk her into that, but not so far. But she has a beautiful voice.
Okay, so Lucille is this beautiful petite woman who, like you said, for some reason, loves you to the moon and back. We haven't figured that one out why
No,
yet.
no, me neither.
Um,
Don't try.
I
Don't try. Don't tell her. Go with whatever it
well,
is.
we think it has something to do with angels walking on the earth.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Probably.
but she's the most introverted woman I've ever met. And, wonderful, wonderful conversationalist when you get her going, but you only get snippets because a true introvert really needs that break. And she will find a reason to just let Stu take over, let me take over, go out to the kitchen and find something to do, all of these things. So I can't even imagine her in a group.
I'm going to blow your mind then, because
Yeah.
prior to
My
this, quite a
gosh.
bit prior to this, we first met. I was in the play ministry. I was actually running the lights for the play ministry. When we first started putting it together, my brother had the script and he had a handful of people and nothing else. So it was up to everybody to gather props, me too, and build a light system for the portable light system because we traveled all over New England.
Mm,
So I built a rudimentary on $110, which back then was a lot of money.
yeah.
Um, I built a rudimentary light system that worked functioned very well for the first. I don't know how many performances they ran that thing before it was just so battered from traveling that they had to completely redo the light system. We're talking about throwing this thing in the back trunk of a car. We're putting it in the back of a Volkswagen Beetle. I mean, we have to wrap this thing up. It's all going to be portable. It's all going to fit. I could get it in a Volkswagen Beetle. That's how I designed it to fit in my Volkswagen Beetle. So anyway, needless to say, it had a rough life. But anyway, I was doing that, and I met Lucille at New Year's Eve in 1976. We've been running the play ministry about 6, 8 months. I lose exact track now. My brother could tell you the exact date. I remember the first performance, just not the date.
Mm.
But it was early 1976. We, I met her on New Year's Eve, and shortly, somewhere thereafter, grab onto your seat. She joined the teen ministry as an actress after accepting the Lord. And yeah, missionary dating works great. I'll get to that someday. Um, anyway, we they put her up on stage as the bad girl.
The bad guy.
So yeah, I knew you'd enjoy that. You know, she's going to play the bad girl. Hmm.
Oh my goodness.
In the
This is like okay, this is like Olivia Newton-John trying to pull off the black leather thing at the
Pretty
end of
much,
the
yeah, it's pretty much Grease all over again. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty much that. You nailed it. So she did a good job though. She did a good job, but she had trouble with it because she had to get angry and that she didn't like that. So it was a struggle for her to come in and out of character. And she didn't beat me too hard usually, but bruises where they don't show and so on and so forth. But um, but anyway, that's how I think she started in ministry. Um, I started back when I first came to Christ in 1973. I'll share this quick story. So
Mhm.
I was on a road I shouldn't have been on, dealing with people I shouldn't have been dealing with. Believe me, I shouldn't have been dealing with these people. Working at a place I shouldn't have been working at, a bar and a strip club. And there's mafia and cops on the take, and it was just anything you can bookies, just everything you can possibly imagine that you've seen in these 60s and 70s movies. Where, at any rate, so my brother kept trying to invite. He had come to Christ a couple of years earlier, and he just kept trying to invite me to this and to that, and I just like blow him completely off. Finally, one night, I was in a bad place, and he wore me down. So one Sunday night, with nothing better to do, he decided he would invite me one more time, and I said, "Okay, I guess I'll get him off my back, um, and I'll go this Sunday. How bad can this be, right?" And at this point, I'd pretty much come to run the gamut about anything you could possibly want to try to figure out what that hole in your life is, that hole in your heart, the Jesus-shaped hole that I didn't understand what that was.
Yeah.
And so we're going to go out to this place called the Freedom Farm and hear some music. Okay, sounds like I could do this. And at the last minute, he says, "Oh, my car is full. You'll have to go with these other people I don't know." So I end up in a what would I what would I equate this car to? It's a small station wagon, um, and there are probably 8 people in this thing.
Oh my
For a
goodness.
car designed for five, pretty much, maybe 9 people. I don't know. I have to do the math on 8 or 9 anyway. But the car's
So
jammed.
basically you were clowns in a clown car.
Clown and clown. Yeah, exactly what we were. So there's three of us in the back of this small station wagon. Think
Okay.
like Volvo station wagon or something. We're in the back of this thing. And so coming back from the place, we stop at some place and they buy dinner and they won't let me pay. And it's like, who are these people? These people are aliens. They're nothing like anybody I have ever met. And they're my age, but they're nothing like anybody I ever met.
Yeah.
What's the deal with this? So on the way home, I'm in the back seat with uh, Tommy, Allison. I've met these people for like 2, 3 hours. Allison starts to talk to me and she starts to witness to me. And in the back of that station wagon, now she's pretty, so that doesn't hurt her case any. I'm going to tell you that right now. It really doesn't. I'm going to be honest with you. Um, yeah, come on, I'm a
Now
teenager.
let that go.
So yeah. But anyway, so I'll let her talk, and she did. She went and she made a great case for it, and I not because she was pretty, but because she took the time to care, and these guys really seem to care about me, um, which was weird because they didn't know me. I gave my life to Christ in the back of a Valiant station wagon, Plymouth Valiant station wagon, and that is that. So
So how did, okay. So you give your life to Christ in the
yes,
back of
ma'am.
this station wagon.
Yeah, I do.
You have to go to work the next day. How did that feel?
So the
Working
next
at the
the
strip
next day I
club
had to
with
go to
the
school,
gangsters.
and later that week work. Yeah, it's excuse me 1 minute. That was uh that was different. I go to school and I put this. There's always somebody in my town, particular at my school, but really from my town. There's always somebody itching for a fight. We're all
Mhm.
white plate kids from the city and out to the burbs and country, and they're always just itching for a fight. So my standard week, I'm always in a scuffle with somebody. I don't usually start them. Actually, I don't start them. I'm not one to start a fight. Finish it maybe. Um, so I have to deal with that. And God sent His provision during this time, so I didn't really have to get into a lot of it with people. Worn them down a little bit, and I'm rough around the edges, so I'm still letting it fly.
Mhm.
But I know there's something's changed. I distinctly remember going up to Hampton Beach with my brother and his gang in his car. Again, we're in a bigger station wagon and we are packed to the gills. There's got to be 10 people in this car, and it's not a nine passenger. Um, people sitting, I remember people sitting on people's laps and that sort of thing. So, oh, I just got to tell this story. We used to pick up hitchhikers. So we picked up a hitchhiker. We went to stop to pick a hitchhiker up one time, and the guy refused the ride. Just
You
looked in the car and said, "I'm good. I'll wait till the next car."
wait
And I
for the
lied.
next one.
My witness. God is my witness. He did not.
I'll wait for the next one. That's funny.
Yeah. So,
Oh my
but
gosh.
anyway, so
Of course, with nine people in a station wagon, can you blame him?
no, no, 10 people in a not nine passenger station wagon. This is a six passenger station wagon. Anyway, so yeah, it's like that. Hey, we can put one more in there. And of course, we're going to witness to him, I guess. So I'm up in Hampton Beach, and I'm talking to somebody at the Agape Inn on the Strip. I
Okay.
also remember it's down further than the Hat Shell on the Strip. It's on the other side, on the not beach side. And he asked me about it, and I said I gave my life to Christ, and I'm going to see this through. And I remember telling him that this is permanent. I remember exact words or something to the fact of I'm going to see this through. So, and God picks the most unlikely people to do His work. By the way, I'm probably the most unlikely person to be chosen to do His work. I'm rebellious. Um, I'm a lot of things, but I'm also I guess I'll stick to it in this. I'm going to stick to it.
Stubborn.
And thank you. Yeah, in all the ways, good and bad, I am stuck. But so that's the start. We were working with cults back then on the street. There were Worcester was rife with cults. If you can believe such a thing, you go down there in a summer evening, City Hall, 5 or 6 different cults being represented on the street, all trying to push their brand, whether it was Hare Krishna or um, the Way International, the Church of Bible Understanding. We used to call them the Church of Bible Misunderstanding, the Forever Family. Huh, I forget.
And this was
Anyway,
in the mid 70s,
it would be early 70s.
early
We're at the
70s.
tail end of the Jesus movement, but this stuff is still strong. It's still out there.
Hmm.
And we would witness to them and witness to other people. We'd push tracks through the window of a taxi. I mean, it was just, kind of crazy. We went bar witnessing one night. That was not productive, but it was interesting to say the least. We decided we're going to go in there and, evangelize the bars. So we had some pretty rat hole bars. Um,
It can
but
be done, by the way.
what's that?
It can be done, by the way.
It can be done. I don't think we did it in the most productive fashion, but they tolerated us because we were kids, we
Hmm.
were teenagers and, let them talk or whatever. I asked the bartender and the bartender, oh yeah, you can talk to them if they want to talk to you. Okay. So you'd hear somebody's philosophy from the bar stool and not new to me because I'm working the bar. I'm still there.
You're
I can't get
still
the
at the
job.
strip club.
I'm still there. I'm now what I did was I made they were only strippers on Friday and Saturday, so I managed to get off of Friday and Saturday nights. So I didn't have to deal with that particular aspect, along with a lot of other fine folks you might want to meet, you
Sure.
know. So during the day and Sunday nights and a weeknight, it wasn't so bad. But I just couldn't get a job. I mean, you could not find work back then.
Hmm.
Adults were working at McDonald's, just to put it in perspective. In the mall, you go through the mall, there are no kids in the mall working, they're all adults. So that I was there until either I graduated high school or I found another job, which God did provide in my senior year, thankfully. But I'd worked my entire junior year and part into my senior year at this place uh, I would before I would get a job that I could get out of there. Basically, 3 years in the restaurant.
Okay, so I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that your junior year, you're 16, 17 years old,
Yeah.
and they hire this kid
Oh no, no, I was 13 when 14 when they hired me.
at the strip club.
Yeah, nobody's paying attention to anything. The cops are all on the take. I tell people this story that no, I'm not kidding. Um,
Yeah, that's why I'm
if I
laughing.
if I tell some people sometimes things I think they really think I'm making this up, but I when I tell you that I'm not, I have people still alive to this day that can attest to this, all of this. But
Like
there are
you
two
can't
types
you
of
can't
people.
write this. This is like bad gangster script here.
Um, I will share a story, true story. But there are two types of people that wash dishes in a restaurant: alcoholics and teenage boys. One
Okay,
of which is going to show up every shift. It's not going to be the alcoholic.
gotcha.
So they'll hire you, absolutely hire you. And my buddy and I, we worked. This is a restaurant. It was just flat out on the weekends. We went from dishes to bar glasses. He worked the front of the machine. I worked the back of the machine, and we just hustled all night long
Mhm.
for 8 hours. We get out there 1:30 in the morning, soaking wet from sweat. Kitchen's 110 degrees or
Yeah.
100 degrees or whatever, just furiously hot.
Hmm.
So that's why I was there. Like I could not work. I could not find a job. It was just, but God gave me the providence to allow them to let me not work on these shifts where I mostly had to deal with these people. However, I seemed to manage to get on the night. It was either Wednesday or Thursday when Big Art, the enforcer, came in to get his payment for not burning the restaurant down.
Of course. His
Okay.
protection.
Yeah. And if you think I'm joking, when a bunch of restaurants in town decided they weren't going to pay protection, four of them burned,
Oh my gosh.
including this restaurant I worked at. Although I wasn't there at the time when it happened, this was after the fact. It was kitchen fire. They caught it. They didn't consume the place, but somebody would sneak in there at night and then find a place to hide until they shut the place down, and then they would wait until everybody was gone. Then they would start a fire and leave.
Oh my goodness.
So the Mount Auburn, the New Yorker, Darkbrook, Dante's. Technically, Dante's in the next town over, but it was right on the literally right on the line. Um, those ones I remember. Those ones I remember.
Hmm.
And so yeah, so Big Art, he's the enforcer. He comes in during the week, and he's everybody's buddy. He'll hold the door for you, in his pastel suit with his fedora,
Ah, love it.
his pastel Cadillac. I'm not
Stylish.
kidding, Coupe de Ville. It's nice.
Stylish.
It's Superfly, only in Italian form. Um, so he keeps trying to first, he wants to give me a ride home at night. I live about a mile from the place, and in the winter it's cold and dark, crappy,
Yeah, it's matches Massachusetts. Yeah.
and it's a hill. If you saw where I live, it's hill like yours, about three times longer. Just to
Okay.
get to the top of the hill, not to get home, just to get to the top of the hill.
Mm.
Um, and weeknight at
It's a
11
good
o'clock,
size hill.
I'm tired, but I don't take his offer because I don't trust him.
Right.
I don't think he's a weird pedophile. I just don't trust him. So he
Well,
keeps
yeah.
saying, he said, "You like washing, the deep Italian. Do you like washing dishes?" I said, "No, it sucks." I said, "But yeah, it's all I can get for work. Should come to work for me." And he pestered me for the longest time, and I kept refusing. Finally, he got mad at me one night, and he says, "What? You like working for nothing?" He was going to pay me four times more than I was making,
Mm.
which was probably more than my mother made
Hmm.
at 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, no, I like waking up not dead. I mean, who's going to show up in the oil barrel when something goes sideways? The blonde kid. He's going to show up in the oil barrel.
The blonde kid with a big mouth.
The blonde kid, yeah, with a big mouth. Uh,
Oh
and this
my
is a,
gosh.
this is
But
a true God is my witness story. I just pushed him off. Finally left me alone. That eventually I get out of there, which thank God. Um, but yeah, there was story after story. I don't want to get into it, but that gives you the feel for what I came out of, what I'm coming out of when I come to Christ, and why this whole new thing, this Christianity, is a bright side of the moon versus dark side of the moon. There's no trying to equate it with anything else. It's
no.
just I'm just like everything's clean sheet. Everything's clean sheet, and
Okay.
there's no turning back.
So uh what was his name? The pastel gangster dude?
A big art,
Big Art. So
big art.
Big Art started coming at you after you were saved?
No, believe it or not, this was actually before I was saved, and I had the sense to see this as
Oh
as
my
a bad
goodness.
thing. Um, we knew who he was. We knew he was an enforcer. He was a knee breaker. Big Art was a big man. Um, you know, 6'2", 6'3",
Hmm.
big,
Hmm.
big hands, big guy. You could tell that despite his hold your door for you and how are you, ma'am, all this garbage, um, he could be a beast at the core of him. That this was a gangster
Hmm.
in the Al Capone fashion, Velvet Hammer.
Yeah.
Um, he had lots of people fooled. He'd show up in different places in the city, and oh, he's such a nice man. Yeah, not so much.
They
Every
always
every
can
week
fool
he'd
you.
come in and he'd chat with everybody and he'd pry at me, and then he'd go in the back room with the owner and then he'd come out and leave like clockwork. And the
Oh,
only time I saw Peter, the owner, there at night during the week was when Big Art would be there. He'd come and then Peter leave.
wow.
We all knew what was going on. There was no question about it. Cops turned a blind eye to everything. Um, yeah, yeah, it was an interesting place to work. I learned a lot of skills there. Yeah, a lot of people skills. I think I learned a lot of people skills there, um, more than probably a lot of other places I've ever worked.
I would think so. I would
Yeah.
think so. That's quite the education right there. But talk about a crossroads moment. I mean, you look at what you could have, where you could have gone. Here's Big Art in his fancy suit and his fedora. You know what he is, but man, he's got the lifestyle. And what
Yeah.
16, 17-year-old kid isn't tempted by that kind of money, right?
Oh, absolutely. Oh no, on one hand you have the money, and I'm like, yeah, that'd be nice, but the other hand, and I have to say this, and people understand this. God had His hand on me for whatever reason, all right,
Mm-hmm.
and He gave me the wisdom, despite the fact that I wasn't a Christian at the time.
Yeah.
He gave me the wisdom to stay away from him, to completely stay away from this guy because he was bad news. Everybody knew he was bad news, but we're thinking, part of you could say, okay, he's bad news, but you know, I'm badder or whatever, right? Whatever thought process a 16-year-old kid can have. I was only 15, I think, at this point in time when he started it. Um,
Which is to
but
say, not much.
yeah, but God must have put the half of Proverbs in my head or something to you know, supernaturally to give me the sense to say this is really a bad idea. This makes no sense on any planet. This can't be good.
Did you did you have any like were your parents involved? Did they can you credit them with any kind of help? This was all God.
Oh, this was all God. No, my parents tried to be good parents. I think they really did their very best for what they could do, but they were not involved, what I would say, in my life. They didn't really, and I didn't share some of the things that went on. I didn't share most of everything that went on, to be perfectly honest with you. Um, they were mostly in the dark with pretty much everything, except they knew I was off the rails. They had kind of let the brakes go, I guess, because there was
Mm.
just, you know, at that point. So um, yeah, they knew it was going. Well, they knew that was going on, but they didn't know what was going on. In fact, my father for years would see Big Art in the city and think he was a great guy.
Huh.
And I tried to tell him, I'm going to break off for a second. I tried to tell him, he wouldn't listen to me. And then another kid who's a musician and a Christian now, but wasn't then,
Hmm.
said, "Oh yeah, he's an e-breaker for the mafia." Now, Mike and I didn't know each other. He actually literally came to work for us. I'd never met him before, and he confirmed it. And he knew more about it than I did. Excuse me. Cold here, definitely.
Ah, the joys of late winter.
Well, I saw somebody that felt good about bringing this cold down here, so I've got it. Both will see that I've had it. So yeah, the musician. I won't name him. His name is Mike, but he people in our circle know him.
Wow. I'm just trying to, so I've got I've got three kids, and I'm trying to think of, I mean, I know things were much more, parents were much more hands off in the 70s. Like
Yeah.
I'm Gen X, I'm a latchkey kid,
Yep.
all of
Me too.
that. Like but I'm trying to think of, I just cannot think of a situation where I would let my 13 or 14-year-old go to work at a restaurant that was also a strip club.
I'm not sure my parents were aware that they had strippers, actually. My parents really didn't go out much. They'd gone there before when, we'd gone to eat there when I was a little kid, probably, in my 7, 8, 9 years old. I don't remember. I remember going there for supper once or twice.
Uh-huh.
Um, before these owners owned it. The previous owner owned it. Same name, same place, but a different owner.
Okay. Okay, so we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They
Oh
didn't
yeah,
know
I
what
don't think I think
happened
they
on
were
the
clueless.
weekends.
Yeah, they
Didn't
were
know
clueless.
what happened on the week. Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Oh my
Oh, by the
goodness.
way, and I just have to share with you that after about the first or second time you see them, they walk by you, don't even pay attention to them. It's like a donut shop.
I believe you.
It really
I
is. It
believe
really
you.
is. It's like even it just it becomes part of the woodwork.
You
Um,
get desensitized to things so quick.
absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I felt bad for them. Um, one of my one of our many jobs, because anything that needed done, they would they would send us off to go do. Bar
Mhm.
back, bring up some liquor, bring up some beer, whatever needed done. We were the
Mhm.
guys that did it. Either the
Sure.
bus boys, usually us, but sometimes the bus boys, but usually it was us. We were right there in the kitchen. He's just to point and say, "Hey, go do this."
Yeah.
Um, bringing them dinner was typically I would be the person that bring them dinner. And so they'd fix them a plate and I'd bring it back into the green room where they were, as it were, or the storeroom with a curtain over it. I mean, it was the green room.
No.
Oh no, really, truly. Um, it was just very sad because they seemed very nice and very appreciative. Oh, they'd want to tip you for bringing their dinner, and no, you would do that, but wouldn't take anything from them. But yeah, it was very sad actually. I found it to be even in my unrepentant state, I found it to be actually pretty sad. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
So
yeah.
so even before you were saved, God had given you the spirit of not only empathy, but wisdom
Mm.
as well.
Well, it has to be God. I mean, I think I was an empathetic person as a kid. Um, that's kind of a people person in a way.
Mhm.
If I trusted you at all. But yeah, God is responsible for the wisdom that whatever wisdom that may have come. I think in the Old Testament, the Holy Spirit used to come upon people, and then
Yeah.
and that it wasn't like they had the Holy Spirit like the day of Pentecost came. This was they had the Holy Spirit for a purpose or a moment or a time.
Mhm.
The Holy Spirit came upon this person. Um, God made Pharaoh stubborn. This is kind of, I think, what God did. He just kind of, in moments in time, but even though I wasn't saved, he'd push the Holy Spirit button and say, hey, go and sit upon this kid because he's about to do something really stupid or more stupid. I think more stupid would be really the proper, um,
So
more
he
stupid.
let you do plenty of stupid things. It's
Yeah,
just the
yeah,
big
yeah.
stuff.
Plenty of stupid things. Um, And I think that if I want people to understand anything about this conversation even as we go forward, and that is, for whatever I did or didn't do, there's people that did worse or better or what have you. This is just my story, but I want people to understand that God, for some reason, when He chose us, He chose you, He chose me, He chose Elizabeth, Lucille, out of whatever circumstances we were in, He's chosen us for a purpose.
Mhm.
And these stories underscore the fact that we're like the 100 that lapped water like a dog. I mean, we're the people they're the last people they chose. We're the last person chosen for whatever. Um, in sports, I wasn't the last guy chosen, as I was really absolutely mediocre at most everything except volleyball. I was pretty good at volleyball. Um, I wasn't horrible, but I wasn't great
Mhm.
ever in anything. Um, I could pitch okay, I could bat okay, I could run the bases, um, okay. I did fine. So, but there's always that one guy that's chosen last because he's horrible, but he's there, so you got to do something with him. Okay, we'll take Billy Bob. Um, and so you question God and say, of all the people I see walking around, incredibly intelligent people, people who are, I don't know, much less rebellious, maybe, much more compliant, and yet you chose me, which I'm like the poster child for don't pick this guy for this. He runs with scissors. Do not, whenever you do, choose this guy. It'll be the death of you.
See, but God
And
does that. I mean, the scriptures tell us he does stuff like this to confound the people who think they're smart,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Just because, he loves to this is going to sound wrong, but in a way, he likes to show off. It's like, look what
Oh,
I
he
can
does.
do. Look what I can do. I can take the, David was what, the eighth son, King David. I can take the eighth son of this guy out in the middle of nowhere and this kid out in the sheep fields and make him the greatest king ever, you know?
And it's all to his glory.
Yeah.
And it's to his glory. So there's a song where the chorus is all about you, it's all about you. But the weird part about all this whole thing is he has chosen us, created us for, I dare say, companionship, to worship him, yes, to love him,
Mhm.
but he wants to give too. This isn't a one-way street. And what I guess people don't understand that about God. If I were to share that, it's a two-way street.
Yeah, it's
He
a
wants us
relationship.
to communicate with him. He wants a relationship, not a monologue. He doesn't want to sit there. People think God wants a monologue. He's going to tell you all this, and you're going to walk around like a robot and do everything he says. Um, no, it doesn't work that way. It's a
No.
relationship. This is a dialogue. Granted, he's really got it's a father-son, father-daughter relationship. So unless we don't get too far off on that field, um, he wants interaction.
Hmm.
God does change his mind. You can change God's mind. It's there's biblical precedent for it.
Yeah.
What if this? What if this? Well, if it's that, then I won't do this. If there's
Hmm.
one person left in Sodom and Gomorrah, I won't destroy it. Well, there wasn't, so the moot
But
point.
even then, he
But
he allowed for, okay, well, this is the person you really care about, so we'll get
yeah,
Lot in
yeah,
his.
yeah. Except that there wasn't anybody there, so that was the end of that story. But
Yeah.
um, you know, he's going to be God no matter what. He's not. You're not going to talk about him being God and doing what God does. But he, this is a dialogue. He has created this world for us. He has created us to love him. He's given us everything. Um, he's given us things that we don't think we understand that we have. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of people tend to uh, think it's them that does this, and it is to some degree. But if we don't recognize the creator, if we don't recognize the person who gave us the ability to do this, and in our world, these are great things. In good grief, I'm gonna shut this thing up. In God's world, these are not um, they're not so great. I mean, they're just things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we look about trying to get a man on Mars, he created Mars. Was there ever life on Mars? Does it really matter? Larry Norman once said this in a song. He said, if there's life on other planets, he's came from them as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's died for them as well.
Yeah.
So going to find life on another planet as if to disprove the creation story or the Bible is a fool's errand. You're not disproving or proving anything. All you're finding is another story,
No. No.
another
No.
story, a
Yeah.
whole biblical story, if that in fact were true. And not,
Exactly.
oh,
Exactly.
the Bible's all wrong and Christians are idiots and the creation never happened because we found life on Mars or Pluto or someplace. No,
That just makes God bigger.
it makes God bigger. One thing does not nullify the other.
Right.
God is God. No matter what you find in the universe, God is God, and He created it. So just because you found it after millions of years doesn't mean it didn't exist. Excuse me, once more, I got to break off. Sorry. So that's kind of how that is, and that, as you see, starts to form my core belief system of the fact that everything we do has an effect on the kingdom, negative and positive. When when I worked for, I worked on the streets, we dealt with not only the cults, but I mean anybody would walk by. But then when you get in conversations with prostitutes and all kinds of people with all kinds of belief systems, and I don't think we brought anybody to Christ. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't think we brought a lot of people to Christ back then. Um, what I do believe is God was honing our skills,
Hmm.
um, sharpening us, refining us, whatever you want to say about that. Um, but also planting seeds.
Hmm.
When when you look at situations, so one of the things that has become incumbent upon me is not to try to miss cues, to miss moments. Um, Still miss moments. I still always will miss a moment,
Yeah.
but there's a moment, and it can be lost, where God has opened a crack in the door, and it can be something very minor, but it gives you the opportunity to stick your foot in that door,
Yeah.
and you're actually being invited to stick your foot in the door. And if you don't do it, you miss that moment. So these are the times and places where, um, most recently, we were up to an Italian restaurant we like here up in Crystal River, and we'd gone there before and we used to live here. And there's one server, a young woman in particular, that's particularly good, and she's funny and all this, but she's just very, very good.
Hmm.
So one night we get the Sabrina, and we're just talking and whatnot. And I asked her about her. She has some tattoos here. I asked her about the tattoos, and she said, "Well, they're for my grandmother. They're something that's special, that means special to her about her grandmother." So
Hmm.
that's really cool. And I said, as we're getting near ready to leave, I said, "So is there anything I can pray for you about?" And I don't typically do that a lot, but this particular instance, I said, it's just a moment where she's shared something and I'm going to share something. So is there something I can pray for?
Hmm.
And she said, yes. And I'm expecting her to say, yes or no, or probably yes, acquiesce. And, I'd go and pray for her at home. But this wasn't the case this time. She said yes, and she stuck her hands out, one toward Lucille and one toward me.
Oh,
And I'm a little bit floored at this point. I'm like,
yeah.
okay, I'm really not expecting it. I should have been, but I'm not.
Right.
So we take her hand and we our heads and pray. And so I told her, I said, I'm going to continue to pray for you. So she appreciated it. She said this. She said, I'm really wanting to get closer to God. And I'm like, okay, I can't let this go. So I
Yeah.
said, I have something for you next time I come in. So we gave her, when I went back in, it was near Christmas time. So we wrapped the Bible up for her. But that's a story in a story. We ordered a bunch of Bibles we have a ministry with a girls' camp. I can't name the camp now. I don't want to jeopardize the relationship because they have public funding.
Sure.
So, but anyway, we've been giving the Bibles for Christmas for 16, 18 years. I don't know. I lose track.
Hmm.
This year, we were able to actually go down there and give them out and hand them out in person, which was really, really cool. Anyway, I had some left over from the previous year, and because you kind of order in bulk, so you get what you
Sure.
get.
Sure.
And so I ordered enough to infill for what they needed, and ended up with one odd number Bible. So we gave out the girls all the Bibles, and had one left over, and that would be the Bible that we would give Sabrina.
Wow.
I mean, I could have gone and got another Bible. I mean, it's not like it's not a supernatural crazy thing. It was like, well, this
Yeah.
is really, really cool. These are
Hmm.
pink NIVs,
Hmm.
and for girls typically like pink. So these are pretty Bibles, um, and they appreciate that. But anyway, so she really appreciated that. So hopefully she's reading her Bible, and we will see her from time to time when we get up there. We don't go up there every week, but when we do, hopefully we'll see Sabrina. And these are some of the things that we try not to miss the moments. Um, I
And
guess
I
that's
would
what happened.
imagine, just being able to recognize those, that's a skill. That's a gift that not everybody has. A lot of people I think go through life pretty oblivious. They're thinking about if they're in a conversation, they're thinking about what they're going to say next,
Oh yeah.
rather than really focusing on what a person is saying to them. And or they don't even get into the conversation in the first place because they're so wrapped up in their own thoughts and what's going on in their lives. But to be able to not only have the personality type that doesn't mind asking the question. I mean, just putting yourself out there and asking the question, that's difficult for some people. But then to follow through on something like that, to recognize, oh, she means now. We're praying now.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We're praying
Yeah.
right there in the restaurant. That
We're
was a surprise. I have to admit, that was a
But
surprise.
I'm sure you,
A
I mean,
pleasant
knowing you, I'm
surprise.
sure you rolled with it
Oh
in that
yeah. Oh yeah. It was
she
very
never,
pleasant.
she never thought you missed a beat. I'm certain of it.
No, no.
I'm
We reached
certain
out
of
and took her hand. It was just, as you're doing this, you're saying, "Oh, it's happening now. She wants to pray now." This is all nanoseconds, but you're like, "Oh,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. But to be able to do that, I mean, these are, like you say, these are skills that are honed. You're out in the streets as a young adult, um, evangelizing, ministering, listening, just talking. It's amazing the skills that we can pick up just talking to people and really choosing to care about the person that we're talking to.
yeah."
So how does that then translate? Like, you mentioned at the beginning, you had sort of been in a band, met Lucille,
Yeah.
she was in a group. How did that translate to, oh, we need to do a coffee house? Like, where did that thought process come into? Because obviously God's preparing you because all of these interpersonal skills are going to be used now as the host of a coffee house. But tell me how that process happened.
Well, so when I came to Christ, a little while afterwards, there was a coffee house. And these are different coffee houses than you've seen, um, more like gathering places, more of
Mhm.
a more of a 70s thing, I guess, a 60s, 70s thing. But there's a coffee house in Worcester, and the guy that was running it was getting into different mission work, was setting it down. So we had the opportunity to take this space above a garage. It was a loft, full
Mhm.
height loft above a garage. It's big for what it is. I don't couldn't tell you how big it was, but I would say a good 24 by 24.
Okay.
And to be given a space that's 24 by 24, it had a loft door. It's kind of cool in the summer. You'd open up the loft door. There's these
Yeah.
double doors, and you're on the second floor. So you're in the city. I mean, you're jammed in chock-a-block, right square in the middle of the city. But here's this old wooden garage, and it's part of the church property. Excuse me again. Sorry. So here it is, the middle of the city, and here we are, a bunch of kids going out, and we're going out on the streets around this area, and of course downtown. And we run into prostitutes and drug addicts. I told you about Sonny, right? So we're going to get into that story in a minute. Sonny the
Okay.
Drunk. Um, but we had this coffee house, and my brother mostly would try to book bands in, which was pretty thin back then. There were a couple that came in that were pretty good, and we had a country kind of a country band come in, which was great. Just music is music, and praise is praise. Um, had a rock band out of New Hampshire, Maine, not sure. I think it was New Hampshire. Came in a couple of times. Mostly we met and talked and prayed and read some scripture and hung out. Mostly hung out,
Christian
truly.
kids getting together and
Yeah, pretty much it. Yeah, pretty much all of that. So I'm in high
okay.
school at this point. I'm a junior. I've just come to Christ, and we had this guy coming around from the neighborhood that we had found somewhere, and he introduced himself as Sonny the Drunk.
Okay.
That's if he had a last name, we never knew it. And he had a kind of I we used to call it a gimpy leg. He had a leg that whatever's wrong with his leg, there was something wrong with his leg. So he carried a cane and he walked as though he had needed the cane to walk. And he was some indeterminate age, but I'm guessing he was a veteran, so he was probably in the Korean War at that point, I guess. Um, he had long, scraggly hair and a long, scraggly beard. He was an alcoholic, and he looked like um, a garden gnome. I mean, that's about the best way to describe what he looked like. Rumpled, and so Sonny would come to the coffee house, and usually pretty well tuned up. He could sometimes get loud and obnoxious and call us dipsticks and retreads. Those were his two favorite things he would call us. And we'd have to take him outside and calm him down. But every week for the longest time, Sonny would show up and be like, "Okay, what do we do with this guy?"
Hmm.
One night he shows up. It's early on. It's still cold. It's winter, February. Take a pick. I'm not really sure. And I'm riding with my friend, who was the driver of the car that Plymouth Valiant I told you about that night when I came
Okay.
to Christ. He was the
Yeah.
driver of the car. So I'm
Okay.
with him this night and his girlfriend, and we're gonna go home. And Sonny says, "I'm afraid to go home." He rooms with a couple of other alcoholics, and these guys they have some dual diagnosis, I think.
Hmm.
Um, they're not bolted together too tight, and he's afraid to go home. So we drive him up to his apartment, about half a mile, three-quarters of a mile from where the coffee house was. And we get up there, and it's this rat hole apartment. It's just crappy.
Hmm.
It's typically a slum, kind of a slum house. So we bring him up the stairs, and all the while he's telling us this, his roommate often threatens to hurt him and beat him up, and he's beat him up before. And but because they all live on disability and Social Security and drink most of their money away, they need each other to pay for the apartment. Otherwise, they're literally homeless.
Hmm.
We open the door, and this is what I see: a bare light bulb hanging from the ceiling by a cord. It's the kitchen slash living room slash I don't know what. Um, and there on the floor is his buddy with a knife in his chest, dead.
Oh my gosh.
Blood everywhere. There's pills in the sink, and he's dead as a cart, or so we think. We drag Sonny back outside. I go back. I'd gone up with Sonny. Mark had stayed in the car.
Uh-huh.
I get back out, and I'm a little freaked out because this is going to be a long night. This is going to be a long night.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I don't know if there's somebody else still in the apartment. I'm a little shook. To be perfectly, I'm not an easily shaken person. Not a fearful person. But I'm a little rattled because I'm a lot of rattled because I don't know if there's anybody else still in the apartment. I don't know where the other guy is. I don't know anything at this point except the guy's laying there with a knife in his chest and blood all over his white t-shirt. I mean, he's just blood everywhere. It's everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
Get down and get Mark, and I'm shaking. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm shaking. And so Mark goes up there. Well, by the time Mark gets up there, the guy's up and around. It seems he wanted to scare Sonny, so he bent the knife over and stuck it into his shirt. But
What?
Mark says, we find out later, he'd cut himself to get all that blood. It was real blood. I know real blood. I blood plenty in my day. I banged myself up in sports and everything else. I know what blood looks like. That's blood.
Mhm.
There
Yeah.
had to have been a half a pint of blood, which goes a long way, by the way, everywhere. He was laying in it. He cut
Oh
himself
my
with his
God.
own
For a
blood to
prank.
be realistic, and it was all to scare Sonny.
Ah, that, mm, that's not normal.
No, 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 not normal. So the reason I tell this story is to underscore um, what God can do in improbable situations. So finally got everybody settled down, I guess, for the most part. Left Sonny there against our better judgment. We had no place else to put him.
Yeah.
Uh, it was all a big joke to the guy. So years later, I'm gonna let's fast forward to the early 90s. I'm in
Okay.
church. I go down to the fellowship hall, and across the room is a girl that I recognize from that neighborhood that used to come to the coffee house.
Hmm.
She's now a woman, tough street kid,
Hmm.
blonde but tough. Still looks tough.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, her name was Sandra, and she spelled it with an H at the end. Don't ask me why I remember this. I don't remember her last name, but I remember that. And I look over and I walk over and I said, Sandra. And she said, she remembered me. And she said, I saw you across the room. I said, yeah, I saw you across the room. And I couldn't figure out why she was at the church. It was just like out of context, out of place, out of time. So we
Hmm.
started to reminisce a little bit about our time on Gilman Street and the center of the city and the things that went on. And back then she was unsaved and she was, again, this tough chickie. I mean, the best way to describe her is just this tough chickie.
Yeah.
And she had given her life to Christ, thank God. Partly why explains why she's in church in the first place.
Sure.
Excuse me. And we started to reminisce, and I said, "Hey, do you remember that guy Sonny the drunk?" Oh yeah, yeah. She says, "I remember Sonny the drunk. He used to this and that." And I said, "Yeah, that was him."
Hmm.
She says to me this: "Sonny the drunk gave his life to Christ." I said, "Excuse me?" She said, "The Soul Patrol, which was his bus, used to go around pick up indigent people and bring them down and feed them,
Uh-huh.
drop them back off again when they were done, and preach to them, I'm sure." Had picked him up so one time or another and brought him down, and of course, fed him and preached at him, and he gave his life to Christ. And you could have told me anything, I would have believed anything else.
But he was hanging out. I mean, he was hanging
It's
out at
cheap
a
now.
Christian coffee house for how many weeks? I mean, you talk
He's like
about
three times
planting
our
seeds.
age,
What's that?
and he's like three times our age.
Yeah. I mean, he had to be getting something out of it besides, coffee. There were some seeds being planted. I mean, it just
Yeah.
goes to show you never know.
You never do. And I don't know if he was alive or dead after that. I have no idea. Never heard or saw from him or her again. I thought maybe I'll see her at church again. And that was a one-off thing. I don't know what or why or how it's God thing, for some confirmation that here's the thing that we all have these opportunities and likewise on the other side of the coin, so do the people that have not yet come to Christ. They have these
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah.
And that's part of this whole free will thing.
Yeah.
If
I
you
heard somewhere once that on average a person hears the gospel like 6 or 7 times before
Yes,
they finally
precisely.
accept.
Yep,
And
you're
you
exactly
never
right.
know where you are in that line when you're talking to somebody.
Yeah.
You could be the
And
first, you could be the one that actually gets to, have the honor to
yeah,
bring the person to Christ. You just never know.
you never know. And that's why, our the my especially my early years was riddled with these one-off moments where um, you invite somebody to Bible study and they come, and then you go to get them the next week and they're not there because
Mhm.
that's how it is.
Yeah.
They're off somewhere or they don't live there anymore. And I mean, this is how it was on the streets back then. You'd see people, meet them. Oh, I'll pick you up next week.
Hmm.
They're long gone, and you had that one moment. And thank God, you did, and you're able to bring them to a Bible study or something, or talk to them, and give the gospel to them, and and you think, okay, we'll run them the next week, and there is no next week.
There's no next
And
week.
that's the thing that I think that really it hammered home to me is that there is no tomorrow. There's only today, and that sounds a little bit severe. That's what it was like. There's no tomorrow. There's no chance that perhaps you'll ever see this person again, even though, oh yeah, pick me up at, 3, Cove Place. That's where I live. And no, that's where they were there that night. And
Yeah.
next week they'll be, shacking up someplace else. So somebody will put them up for in a
Who
shelter.
knows? Or who
Or
knows what happened?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're what you're saying is just a truth that I think people don't they don't really appreciate just how temporal we are.
Oh yeah. No
It,
doubt.
we're not promised tomorrow. So if you have the opportunity, I mean, my gosh, what a statement, to be able to look at an opportunity and say, you know what, I better take this right now because I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. This person could be gone and this could be on me that I didn't obey. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And therefore, you know, I, we just never know. I mean, you can come up with the worst case scenario in just about all of those, but we don't know.
We don't. And not to beat yourself up either. While, some Christians say, well, then their blood is on your hands. You know, we do things out of omission. We can walk through the mall or we can walk through the supermarket and be and say that about everybody in the supermarket. That's not a fair thing to put on a person. If you
Right.
knowingly decide you're not going to do this, like Jonah,
Hmm.
then yes, I suppose it would be said that the blood's on your hands. But morally, if you don't take that tack to try to see these obvious circumstances, you're just going to miss a blessing.
Yeah.
I believe if God's going to bring somebody to Christ, you're not that. I'm not that special. You know what I mean? It's not to
Exactly.
say, okay, we did this for Sunny, yay, team. No, 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 no. He'll bring someone else. It's the old, if you try to shut up the people, the rocks and stones will shout out. Well, this is
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. If you decide you miss the opportunity, you just zone the opportunity. You've got 50 things in your mind, and then my French friend calls it the wit of the staircase. That's the witty thing you wish you'd said as you were leaving the party.
Mm,
The French call it the wit of the staircase. And so,
I like that.
yeah. And so here you are, walking away from a conversation or a brief interaction, and you go, ah, crap, I
Hmm.
should have said something. I had that moment and I lost it.
Yeah.
There's time to pray and say, okay, God, let's pull this cookie out of the fire. Let's just hope this person has the next person that they meet. Maybe this brief interaction um, will be a fond memory for them. I mean, if nothing else,
Mhm.
that's all you can hope for. And to say that I pick up on everything would be a gross overstatement. Um, I try not to miss things. Yeah, I missed one. I missed one a few weeks ago, and I'm hoping maybe I'll get a second chance, but somebody will. But I missed an opportunity, and I had it right there, and I just I didn't catch it when I walked out of the store, but it was afterwards I went, "That's so stupid."
Mm.
And I can't beat myself up, but I did. I really just talk about writing. I mean, could you just hand it to me on a platter? And I missed it. So yes, I'm a little bit beating myself up, but I'm hoping that I'm praying that God will take control of that. I'm going to break off for a minute, Elizabeth. It's okay. But yeah, that's one of those things where I'm a work in progress, and that. I'll share the story, and I'm not sure Lucille's aware, but we're in an ice cream parlor, and there's this young lady in there with her son, and she seemed very nice, very friendly. And I said, I saw the son eating the ice cream until he had all over his face. And I couldn't help but to say, he's a cute kid. I said, he's like maybe 3 or 4. I said, oh, he's really enjoying that ice cream. And, so she said, she's very, very friendly. She said, have a great day. Hope you guys have a nice time as we left. And we hadn't had any real conversation. And then I
Mhm.
realized something much later. She had not had an ice cream. And I thought to myself, you idiot, if you had picked up on this, you could have asked her if she could have bought her an ice cream, because I'm thinking maybe she didn't have the money. Don't
Oh,
know. But it was only her son that was eating the ice cream.
oh,
And I thought that could have led to,
right, right.
um, invite her to church or what have you. And so someday maybe somebody will see her without the ice cream and buy her an ice cream and witness to her. So
Oh,
that's a moment lost, and that's where I say these are the things that I try not to miss. But again, there it is. But it's like,
yeah.
how did you miss that? How did you miss that? Because your mind was someplace else. Your mind was
But
someplace
then
else.
again, I mean, yeah, you can look at it and say, okay, how do I miss that? Because that's something that is more obvious to you. But I bet most of the people who are listening to this would not think anything of a mother taking their 3-year-old to get an ice cream and not getting one for herself. It wouldn't even cross their mind as something that was odd. I can almost guarantee. I can almost guarantee. So, yeah, you don't want to miss those opportunities when you recognize them, but even you who have been trained, and I really believe that your life has trained you for this kind of stuff, you've been trained to recognize them. Even you didn't recognize it immediately. So, it's for you, yeah, maybe you missed it, okay. But yeah, for most people, I don't think people are wired that way. For
Well,
unless
I'm
they
praying.
have a gift.
Yeah, and it's the Holy Spirit too, and
Yeah.
that I even recognize that afterwards at all leads me to believe I need to pray for this person. And I guess
Mhm.
what I'd like to share is that too, is that um, certain things have become incumbent upon me. Prayer in my private prayer life, my quiet driving in the car, great for that.
Mhm.
Just when I'm working, and it's not a prayer closet thing, although I guess that's my prayer closet. I'm by myself, I'm working around the house, painting, whatever, and things come to
Mhm.
mind, and they do. I pray for them.
Yeah.
Um, I saw this at a cafe one night. And I want to be better at it. I tell you that this is coming from somebody who knows that they're lacking. But I went to McGuire's. We went to McGuire's years ago. We were up in Pensacola working, and it's like 400 miles from where we live. We drove up to Pensacola to work for the week,
Mhm.
and um, we asked the local, well, where would you eat here? He said, if you're in Pensacola, you've got to eat at McGuire's. McGuire's is an Irish restaurant.
Okay.
I, okay, I could do something like that. That sounds good to me. And so we went to McGuire's. Well, we walk in the door, and there are dollar bills stapled all over the walls, the ceiling. it was said that there was, this is in 2008. It
Hmm.
was said that there were over $1 million in dollar bills stapled all over the walls and ceilings in McGuire's.
Oh my goodness.
You can look it
Okay.
up online, McGuire's, Pensacola, Florida. And there are other restaurants that have done this. This is not the only restaurant that has ever done this, but so the deal is you write your name on it, maybe name or where you're from, and you hand it to the server, and they'll literally, I did it, and they staple it to the wall, and they're this thick, they're this deep,
Oh my
they're
goodness.
just stapled. They keep stapling them to the walls. Fire marshal must have a fit, but anyway. Um, So I said this one night at a cafe, it kind of occurred to me. I said, can you imagine? Here's McGuire's with $1 million bills stapled and they're all over the place. I said, what would it look like if those dollar bills here at cafe were really our prayers? What would that look like?
Mm.
What would that look like if every time, you know, we would pray, these prayers metaphorically get stapled to the walls and ceiling? What would that look like? I said, that should look like McGuire's. It
Wow.
should look like McGuire's.
Yeah, that's a deep challenge. That's a
Yeah.
Because we're all, I mean, not I truly believe we are all gifted in whatever we can do for the kingdom, that's a gift. You know, we're all called to do our work. We have a purpose. God has that mind even before we come to him. The Bible says even before we're born, he has a purpose for us. And but whatever those giftings are, the universal one is prayer. We're all called to pray.
Amen.
And that, yeah, how many of us miss those opportunities? And I say us on purpose, but how many of us miss those opportunities and it can be such a simple thing. It doesn't have to be this 20-minute long drawn out prayer
No, not at all.
with the these and those and oh God, and God doesn't, there are times and places for those, but it God just wants the ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
I forget the address, but we're told, pray ceaselessly. Well, what does that look like? That's just an ongoing conversation between you and God. And it can be as quick as oh Lord, please be with so and so. They look like they need this. That
Mm.
the woman in the ice cream parlor. Oh God, I'm thinking about her today. Just give her a blessing. Let her know, whatever it comes to mind. I've got to think that that's a prompting of the Holy Spirit when those kind of things come to mind,
Mm.
and we just need to respond.
And take the opportunity. And again, don't wait. That's, I think, the
Yeah,
thing that I found is that we are so easily distracted. We have the squirrel moments, where all of a
yeah,
sudden, and I think Satan leverages that and says, okay, we'll just give you this stuff. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that.
yep.
Um,
Shiny.
Ah, yeah, yeah, I call them BSOs, bright shiny objects. These things that distract us from the things. Sometimes it's harmless. I'm talking with somebody, and this amazing classic car rolls in the background, and your eyes go,
Mhm.
yeah, okay, back to the conversation. But if we pray right now, don't get distracted by the BSOs, and just like you said, it's a simple prayer. I'm a simple person when it comes to prayer, and my prayers are not eloquent. I suppose if I were called to do some public oratory, I can put together a more eloquent prayer. But when I talk to God, it's a conversation. It's like, I have a friend who's recovering in the ER, a musician, and I just say, hey, please heal Joe. Please heal
Yeah,
Joe.
yeah,
Please heal Joe. There's nothing else I can say. I don't know what else to say. God knows what's wrong with him. I'm not a doctor. I know what's wrong with him, but God knows what's wrong with him.
right.
And base of it, so please heal Joe. Heal him
Yeah,
up like he was before. That's all I can do. Um, that's all I need to say, really. You get 100 people or 1,000 people praying for somebody. So this Allison person who brought me to Christ, um, we stayed friends for years. We're still friends. We stayed friends for years. We see each other more regularly when we were younger. Both married now. She lives in Massachusetts. We live in Florida. Um, so about early 90s, I guess, being pretty close to 20 years later, her mother, her husband had passed, so the mother remarried in due time, and we were up there for the reception. And so Alice and I, we got together aside from everybody else, so we could talk.
Hmm.
And we were in the kitchen, our mom's kitchen, and Allison says this. Now, keep in mind, I'd never met these people prior to that night. And Allison says to me this. She says, "You know, we were praying for you back then." Oh, that's nice, Allison. I appreciate that. That's nice. She says, "No, you don't understand. We were praying for you." That's nice, Allison. Appreciate that. You don't understand, she says. We thought you were going to die.
Oh my
We
gosh.
were praying for you. So looking on the outside, never having met me, but hearing my brother apparently quite concerned, knowing more than my parents, I'm sure, what was
Hmm.
going on, and still not knowing half of it. Um, he was telling his friends, my brother's in deep trouble. And so they were
Working at
praying.
this place, the mob's all over it.
I don't even think
Keeps
he knew
getting
that. I don't even think
keeps
he knew
getting
that.
what's the word I'm looking for? Propositioned by the enforcer.
I don't think he knew that. And there's just other things that, people I worked with and people that knew me, and his word got back to him. And
Wow.
Uh, it's just I'm not sure what he did and didn't know. I should ask him someday, but um, he
That'd
had
be
his
an
friends.
interesting
He had his
story.
friends praying for me, and that was her. That was her exact words. It was just I was
Right.
like, okay, yeah, that's nice. You're praying for me. That's nice. That's nice. And I guess this went on for a couple of years, but they were praying for me.
And if you think about it, you know, you mentioned a couple of things that happened, a couple of moments of I think I called them forks in the road, moments of choice where you were granted this wisdom or this insight and you were able to resist. I wonder, and we'll never know this side of heaven, but I wonder if you had that because of those prayers.
Oh, I'm quite certain. I'm quite certain. At this point in time, they're praying for me. I think this is that time they're praying for me. Um, Somebody was praying for me,
Hmm.
clearly somebody was praying for me. My parents weren't Christians, so I don't think they were praying for me. They were probably worried, but um, I gave them some reason to do that, quite frankly. I have to break off. I'm sorry again for a second and come back in a minute.
Hmm. Oh,
So yeah, that was the people who were praying for me, and
and that just underscores that the power of prayer. It just underscores it. It's not, you know, some random happenstance that you managed at 15 to have this earth, this wisdom to not be lured in by the temptation of money and everything that you wanted. I mean, at 15, that is a God thing. That is a God thing. And to hear all these years later that your brother and his friends were praying for you. Okay,
yeah,
now we know why. Now we know why that God thing. And to go back to something you said before, if God wants something to happen, if he has a job to do and has things in mind, he's going to get it done.
yeah,
So we're not, I'm not saying that had your brother not been praying for you, that you would never have come to Christ and never have done all this work that you've done with the coffee houses and the ministry and, being such a huge. I mean, the amount of people that have come through your doors, both musicians and visitors, that's huge. The amount of contact that you've had, the work that you've been able to do for God's kingdom. That's not to say that if your brother and his friends never prayed for you, that that would never happen. But it really does underscore, well, we can look at it and in our understanding say, okay, yeah, probably because of this, you chose this direction, which led you in the other direction, which eventually led to you in the back seat of the station wagon being saved. And think of the blessings that now your brother and his friends are going to receive just by playing that small role. You know,
Yep.
I heard once that
Mm.
heaven is a place where there's no pain and no sorrow, but we are going to God's going to let us know what we missed out on. The things that we chose not to do for him. He's going to show us the storehouse of blessings that he had in mind for us that he just couldn't give us
Right.
because
Right.
we chose another way. And I just think about, okay, well, I'm sure your brother and his friends, I'm sure they have their own storehouses, but that was one blessing that God was able to give to them because they were faithful.
Yep. Yep. That's the truth there. It's just it amazes me even when I think about it now because again they didn't know me. I didn't know. I never met. I think I met one of them over all the years. I think I met one of them, and that was because he picked him up when he was driving me someplace and picked him up along the way, or vice versa. I can't remember now, but that was pretty much it. Um, So, God has some amazing things that's happened. The first restaurant I worked at was actually a steakhouse.
Hmm.
It was one of the ones I told you about that had a kitchen fire. I worked there
Yeah.
for about 6 months or so, um, but was wanting to get into this other place. 'Cause some of my friends worked there, so I wanted to get into that. But I met. Here's how God works. In this first place, funnily enough, the name of the place was Dante's Inferno. Uh, it was a steakhouse. The guy's name was Dante. Last name was Dante.
Obvious choice then.
Obvious choice.
Yeah.
So, um, but I met two people there that eventually none of us were Christians. Eventually, we become Christians. One of which was a guy by the name of Franny, um, who we would eventually do street ministry with. We would reconnect a couple of years later and end up. I know you. I know you from Dante's, and we would do street ministry together. The other one was Lucille's next oldest brother. I worked with Ray.
Okay.
One day, I'm a Christian at this point, I believe. Yeah, I must be. And we stop to pick people up, which we do before we're going anywhere. We fill the car up and we all go because that's what we do. And so we stop my brother's old station wagon. We stop, and in gets Ray. And I'm like, I haven't seen you in a couple of years. Comes find out he's given his life to Christ, and that would be how I would meet Lucille. Meeting Ray at the steakhouse and working with him for the 6 months I worked with him.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's
Yeah,
just a small world. Small world.
small world, very small world.
Wow. And lo and behold, he's the brother of the love of your life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely,
How many
absolutely.
years have you and Lucille, how many years have you and Lucille been married now?
It'll be 46 in May. We're
Wow.
heading for the 50. We're heading for the 50.
50's for quitters. Keep going.
Yeah. Oh,
That's what I
yeah.
told Joe. I'm like, honey, 50's for quitters. We can make it to 75,
That's
right?
right. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
We were at a friend's wedding in 2017. We're come down to Florida for the wedding, and so somebody, the MC, and this she's planned this all out. So this is her doing. But the MC said, "All right, we're all on the dance floor," and says, "How many people have been married 5 years?"
Hmm.
And So they had the people that first been married the shortest amount of time leave the dance floor.
Yep.
How many people have been married 10 years? Going on. So when it came to us at that point, I think we were married like 30 years and change or what have you. And well, maybe 40, I guess, at that point. Anyway, not doing the math here. We were some of the last people on the floor, but there were a couple of couples had been married over 50 years that were on the dance floor. And even the MC said this is a very rare thing to see people married that long.
Yeah.
So the secret to being married for a long time is not letting your spouse find the perfect pillow to smother you with. So that's pretty much the secret of being married. People over, they have their theories, but that's mine. Uh,
You get those loose fill ones.
yeah, I don't. They're not good for anything. You get something solid, with a good cover on it. That might do it. We're not really sure. Haven't succeeded, so I don't know. She does. Well, you won't know. I'll be able to tell you. Um,
I have
so
a feeling that if she would have done it, she would have done it a long time
Oh,
ago.
yes. Yeah, pretty much. Um,
Although you did get her back down to Florida, so she
yeah, well, no,
might.
she got me back. I mean, oh, yeah, no, if I had brought her back to Florida, that might have been a divorce. I don't know.
Uh,
Um, no, but yeah. So years ago, I'm at UConn for a conference. It seems like things just really were weird back then, but they really were. We were supposed to have been given housing. Goes, by the way, as a theme that went along um, when we were working with the teen ministry, the play ministry. But in this particular time, it's before that. It's about 2 years before we were going to get involved with the play ministry. There was a
mhm.
speaker by the name of Josh McDowell. He was going to be at UConn. And so my buddy and I decided we're going to go for the weekend.
Okay.
So we jump in the car and go, and we were told we'd have housing and be fed. And well, the guy that was supposed to house us apparently looked at us two long-haired kids, and he wasn't a Christian. There was just somebody that decided they would volunteer to house us.
Hmm.
One assumes that means, coffee and shower and maybe a little food, at least a little breakfast, or
Yeah.
at least a piece of toast, who knows, a donut. No, well, we could sleep on the porch. Well, this is Columbus Day weekend, so it is a fairly warm Columbus Day weekend, but the
Okay.
nights are dropping down in the 40s. So here we
Yeah.
are, Cliffy and I are out on his unheated porch, um, with no sleeping bag and no blanket and no pillow because we have nothing, and
He
we
didn't
didn't
give
think
you anything.
no, and so we slept out on the porch and for 2 nights
Oh
in
my.
our clothes. And yeah, but we went to the conference nonetheless. And it was Friday night, you know, Saturday afternoon in the evening, and there's praise and worship and other things involved with it. And then Sunday morning service.
Hmm.
Josh McDowell said a couple of things about marriage that are still reign true today, and I give his advice, and I do credit him this. And he said, no matter what, don't go to bed angry.
Yeah.
Don't ever go to bed. If you're up all night, do not go to bed angry.
Yeah.
And then the other thing he said, and I probably said some other things that'll come to mind, but the other thing that was salient was he said, marriage is not 50-50. Marriage is 100%, 100%. And I tell people that when they ask about, well, what's the success of a marriage? Well, besides the pillow thing, is we've tried. And I tell people it isn't like 100%, 100%. We're all always doing exactly the same percentage into the marriage. It's not true.
Hmm.
And there are times, even today, where Lucille is really pulling more weight than I am. I'm going to be honest with you. She's still
Yeah.
working remotely. I'm not. All I do, I'm working on the house, but she's cooking and washing and working remotely, and I'm doing my part, but she's pulling more than her share, and it's true. And then there are other times when the shoe will be on the other foot.
Yeah.
And the key here is to recognize that and not resent it, and not
Hmm.
resent it when it's bug out of screen for a second. We have cancer. The guy cures a common cold. I'm in. You know, I'm investing in that guy. Um,
My goodness.
well, anyway,
I yeah,
that's
what you were saying about marriage. I don't know. I know we've talked about the 100%. Um, but yeah, the going to bed angry and not going to bed angry and 100. It's so true. And it's not, you know, like you said, there are times when one person is going to pull more than the other, but you do it for the other person.
oh yeah,
That's 100%. You give everything because you know that you can trust that you're going to get everything back from your partner.
oh yeah. You're right about that. It's a trust thing.
Yeah, yeah, that you don't hold anything back and because you know that they're not going to. And I think those two things, what you just said, those two things for Joe and I are very those are probably the biggest, especially the not going to bed angry because oh my gosh, the nights that an argument will flare up at 11:30 at
Mhm.
night.
Oh yeah.
And okay, now we're up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, but gosh darn it, no, we're not going to bed. And you got to know we've been tempted. But
Hmm.
no, no, you can't because that anger just it seeps in. And
Doesn't look
it
better in the morning, does it?
no, it does
Looks
not.
worse.
It does not. And that was just something some very wise person, I don't know who we heard it from first, but a very wise person told us that. And we took that to heart going into our marriage, and we're at 26 years now. So,
Nice.
not, we're working on the 48, but it's going to take us a while.
Well, you beat the odds already. I mean, let's face it, you're among some of the, I'm not going to quote statistics because I don't know them, but I'm guaranteeing that you're in the higher percentage or lower percentage of people married long term.
Yeah.
So many marriages don't make it a year, 2 years, the old 7 year itch that
Yeah.
people talk about. The saddest thing to me is I used to, I was fascinated by crazy things, and the newspaper used to list divorces.
Hmm.
And I don't know why. I always read the legals and all this stuff.
That does seem
It,
like a strange thing for a newspaper
it,
to list.
it is. It was a strange thing to probably follow, but I didn't read it every night. It wasn't like I was glued to it. It was just every so often I'd pick it up. And what struck me sad is they would list the person's marriage date and that they're getting divorced. I don't get
Hmm.
the You people were married in 1954. Now it's 1974, 1984, and you're getting divorced. Like, that is horrifically sad.
Yeah.
We're going to take and throw 30 years away
Yeah.
of memories. I mean, you can't. How do you reconcile the memories when you're divorcing somebody because apparently you don't like them anymore or whatever, can't get along with them anymore? And all the memories, the kids growing up, the house, the cars, the vacations, all gone.
Yeah.
And I thought that's the saddest thing. You know, when you get married, first off, get married to somebody. Oh, yeah, this is what it is. The other thing he said a couple of things. He said, don't marry somebody you can live with. Marry somebody you can live without. I can't live without.
Yep.
So this was the other thing. Um, I had a lot of nice girlfriends, and I love them dearly, and some are still friends with, but they're not the ones that God wanted me to marry, apparently. Um,
Mhm.
So, that speaks of that. They're not somebody I couldn't live without. And that sounds terrible, but that's the
No,
reality.
no, it's like it's exactly what you said. We've told our kids the same thing. Because a couple of them have been in longer term relationships now, and they're starting, they're in their early 20s. They're starting to think of forever as this person forever
Oh
for
yeah.
me, that kind of a thing. And yeah, that what you just said is exactly what we said to them. It's you don't. My mom, when I was starting to think about is Joe the person I'm going to marry. Now, Joe and I, you remember, Joe and I met when I was 14 and started dating. So, nobody thought that this kid was going to be the one that I married.
Right,
Nobody.
right.
It's just stupid 14-year-old. She doesn't know anything. She's going to go through half a dozen boyfriends before she finds the one. But anyway, here we are, 3 years later, and Joe and I are still together, and we're going off to college together, and starting to really think about, yeah, this is probably the person I'm going to marry. And my mother, thinking she was very wise, my mother said, well, put together a list of the things that you love about them, and then make another list of the things that you don't love so much about them, and if the ones that you love outweigh the ones that you don't love, then yeah, he's probably a good match.
Yeah.
My mother divorced my father the year after Joe and I got married.
Uh, uh,
And it is sad. It's sad to throw that history away. It's sad to break up that union. But on the other hand, there are unions that probably never should have been, and my parents were that. I'm obviously I'm a product of that. I'm kind of happy about that. It's worked out well for me. But
mhm,
on the other hand, I don't have a relationship with my dad, and there's a reason for that. He
mhm.
things there are some people that just make it very difficult to love them. And my father falls into that line. If you know anything about narcissistic and borderline personality disorder, uh my father is textbook. And it's unfortunate because that's a product of deep hurt. He was deeply hurt as a child, and he has no control over it. It's not something he chooses to do. It's a deep rooted protection mechanism that he learned as a child and will always have, always. you know uh Joe likens it to a bus at the top of the hill. Sorry, I'm kind of going off the rails
No,
here,
no,
but
no. But this is good. This is actually great.
but you think of a bus at the top of the hill, and that's the person with the narcissistic or the borderline personality disorder. Um, that bus has faulty brakes. It's no fault of the bus. The bus didn't choose to have faulty brakes. But if that bus is coming down the hill, you're not going to stop it.
Yeah,
But you certainly don't have to stand in the way.
right.
And that's the choice that most people end up making with those personality types, is you've just got to get out of the way, because you're going to get clobbered,
Yeah,
and it's not going to stop. You'll have good days, and you'll have good times, but at some point you're going to get clobbered again, and you never know when that's going to be. And that type of emotional abuse, again, it's not intentional, but it's coming.
yeah.
And so, for my mother, um, she's actually one of the lucky ones in that she made my dad think it was his idea to get divorced.
Wow, wow.
And that's pretty much the only way you're going to get out of a relationship with these people clean, is if it's their idea. Otherwise
Yeah.
it gets ugly. And I've just been noticing more and more. And maybe it's just because I'm paying attention, or maybe it's because our society has been breaking down for the last, 50, 60, 70 years,
Yeah.
you know, in that there are more and more people that just seem to fall into this category of they can't control themselves in how they lash out, because that's just a hurt that they're not even capable of looking at. You call it a trigger warning, you call it whatever you want to call it. They're protecting themselves, and that's their number one priority.
It's
And
it's it's that. It's that, and they're medicating and other things that
oh yeah,
you know don't
yeah,
help the situation.
right,
Yeah.
right. And only God can help that situation.
Thank
It
you.
and
Yeah.
wow, I just kind of took us off the rails there, but
No,
I
we
don't
didn't really actually have it.
but it's I think that was just going towards, or speaking to, it is sad when you see a long-term relationship end, but sometimes, sometimes for the safety of one of the people in the relationship, sometimes those relationships need to end, you know.
We've all been to weddings, probably all. If you haven't, you will someday. We callously call them pre-divorces.
Mm,
So we, I had, we had a sign business years ago,
hmm
and small, and it really got off the ground. I think if the internet had been up and running then, we would have probably done very well, but it was just tough to get moving. And I did finally decide to not to pass on an opportunity to grow the business in an exponential way because I felt that it was going to take away from Carpenter's Workshop, the ministry we had at the time. It would have involved all my resources, but that's a sidebar.
hmm
Um, so one of the things that got foisted upon me, so we did signs, and I had a buddy that did wedding invitations and business cards. That's great. It's a great sidebar. Just give this to him, and he'll ship the product back, and ta-da! I'll
hmm
take a couple of percent off of it, whatever. But just to have that service along
Yeah.
with the signs. And one day he calls me up, and I'd given him a job, and he says, I gotta tell you, I can't do them anymore. He says, I don't have a tax ID. I've been doing them, but he didn't realize it. He wasn't trying to do anything wrong. He just didn't realize he wasn't a businessman in that respect and realized that he didn't have a tax ID number.
Mm,
And so he could do the invitations, I guess, but couldn't give them to me. He had to pay taxes on it.
okay. Yep.
So this happened to be one of my best friend's daughter's wedding. I said, great. I said, well, let's get this thing rolling. So sure enough, we got hooked up with a couple of distributors and got our affairs in order. I already had tax ID. The point I'm going to get at is that we would do a lot of wedding invitations. It became pretty popular, and quite honestly, we had a pretty good business going with it. If we could have pushed that out, we might have made half a living out of it,
hmm
and not a whole living, but a good chunk out of it. We would see husbands and wives or fiancés come in, and we could tell. We'd watch them, and you have to
Mm,
watch very hard to see these two are going to make it, and these two are never going to make it. They're arguing about the stupidest things, and I'm thinking, if you drag this into your marriage, you're not going to have a marriage.
yeah.
And so you see, and what you question, not being judgmental, but just question what's the basis for their relationship? Are they basing it on physical attraction or what? You just look at me and you say, what is the basis of your relationship? You guys can't agree on the color of the ink. You might tell the guy, shut up, it's her day, but um, and so you wondered. So we would
Mm,
kind of refer to these as pre-divorces because you knew that others you'd see they just clicked and it was everything, and they were, what do you think? Oh no, what do you think? And what do you think? And it was that give and take that I want you to be happy, and husband would be like, or male would be, I want you to be happy. This is your day.
mm,
And so we can't guarantee that was a litmus for their life together, but it showed. Um,
yeah.
and so that was one of those things. But you're right, there are just marriages that are not should never happen. And whether they divorce or not, you just sit there and say, I only hope God gets all these two people because this is awful. I mean,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
hand is this. Your hand is there anybody who has any objections to why these two people hold
Sure.
the hand down, hold the hand down, hold the hand down?
I saw them ordering their invitations. They were horrible.
Yeah, you're twitching. It's like you're sitting there twitching, going, "If only I could say what I really think."
Gosh. Oh man.
I,
This is why I love these kind of conversations. This is why I really wanted to start this podcast. The thread that will run through all of these conversations, excuse me, is worship. That you ran these coffee houses for ages and had so many experiences, and yet where God took our conversation was completely different, talking about marriages and yeah, being able, I think one of the most important things that is I think one of the most important things to recognize before you get into a long-term relationship with somebody or think about marriage is, are you okay on your own? You gotta be okay on your own. You gotta be okay with who you are. Um, Preferably with Christ, you know,
Christ.
because that's our best possible selves.
Yeah,
But are you okay on your own? Because if you're not okay on your own, you're not going to be okay with somebody else either. And that's
true.
just going to open doors to all sorts of different problems. And whether it takes 2 years or 20 years, as in the case of my parents, it was 20 years. They're not okay, and it's because my dad never was okay. Never. And he
And that
won't
makes it
be.
difficult.
It
That
is.
makes it difficult.
It really does. It really does. And it just adds that next degree of difficulty. I have a dear friend who, again, married for over 20 years and it just ended. They're closing on the house this month and it's done.
Wow,
It's
that's
done.
sad. That's
But
sad.
again, he has that same borderline personality disorder, and she just
Yeah,
couldn't put up with the abuse, and she saw it transferring to the kids, and that was her impetus,
yeah,
that it
that's
was
that.
to
Yeah,
protect the kids. And
that's
but
sad.
it is.
That's
It
sad.
is.
That's sad. It is. We the divorce rate's just about the same for Christians as for non-Christians. That's a
Hmm.
an awful thing to see. We're not being a witness to the world uh, in that respect. We may have other um, witnesses to give, but that doesn't. And the world knows this. So it's not something Christians had
Yeah.
cooked up and said, "Oh, well, look at
Yeah.
this." It's like 50% to 52% in the world. It's just not even scientific margin of error doesn't even exist in this. We're not even hitting the 3% mark or anything.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but the running theme in this conversation today, if I can just break back off, because I know you wanted to know, people probably want to know a little bit more about coffee houses. The whole thing here is that we strive to bring the word of Christ to people. We
Hmm.
chose our acts not for their musical talent, which really kind of, I guess, in some ways astounds or saddens or surprises the musicians. Um, we felt that the musical talent generally was a given,
Hmm.
that people that God had brought toward us were proficient, good, whatever word you want to use,
Yeah.
talented. Um, that was never a worry, really. We tried some people out on the stage who just weren't going to work out. This is true. But for the most part, God always brought really talented people. But not all the talented people that came across our plate, we felt were we needed to know that spiritually they were on target. Spiritually they were walking with the Lord and being in a place where God is using them,
Hmm.
um, not chasing much as we all want to be the best in our field and maybe go places where I don't know, maybe where we are challenged to be better or on bigger events, bigger venues, but not chasing the Nashville thing.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not going to knock Nashville. I'm just going to say that if you are faithful in small things, as the Bible says, you'll be given greater things.
Yeah.
There's so much work to be done in New England, as you guys y'all are in New England, New York area. There's so much to be done there. And, it's until you live down here or someplace down in the Bible Belt, you don't understand how hard the ground it is up there. So we chose people that we felt really were walking with the Lord, that really came to minister the gospel, that didn't care if we had a slow night, came out in snowstorms, decided, snowstorm or not. I remember having a conversation with one band member and a leader of the band actually, and he says, I'm on my way and I had a flat tire, and I said, well, I'll come and I'll come. I had an air compressor. I'll come and I'll get you. So I drove down there in the snowstorm and we blew up his tire, but he still didn't feel good about the fact that he had a bad tire and no spare. I said, well, I'll just take you over. And he says, can we I was going to pick up the drummer. I said, we'll go pick up the other drummer. So in this awful snowstorm, we picked, but the conversation before I left the house was, do you want to pull a plug on it or do you want to move forward with it? Because I
Hmm.
know there's not going to be a lot of people there,
Yeah.
which is weird. I'll circle back to that real quick. But so picked him up, picked up the drummer, went back, and bass player showed up and all, and they put the concert on. Kind of in a more of they get off the stage and kind of just set up on the floor, and this was at Cafe Condillos, and had a small concert for a handful of people.
Yeah.
But it was awesome. But the attitude was, God gave us this opportunity, and if we can get there and do it, let's get there and do it. Whether there's one or five or 20 people, I think there were like 10 people there that night. It was 10 people that wouldn't have been there if we weren't there.
Yeah.
And it was the attitude of let's do this thing. Let's do this. It's as simple as that. Let's do this thing. God has given us a talent. God has given us a date.
Yeah.
Um, let's just do this thing and see what happens.
Yeah.
Um, that I guess pretty much sums up everything that Lucille and I ever done or tried to do for the kingdom. Is pretty much we don't know. My buddy Billy and I and a bunch of other people, but I think it was really Billy's impetus to do this. Decided one day, you got to picture this. Kids say, oh, we're gonna have a lemonade stand, we're gonna have a go-kart race, or we're gonna do something, we're gonna build a
Mm.
soapbox. Kids just decide to do this as if
Right.
it's happened, as if there's no anything in your way. Well, Billy
Right.
decides that there's no good place for Christians to record. This is back in 1987. And we should build a recording studio. Okay. Well, I have some building experience, but I've never built a recording studio before. So let's just do this thing. So
Sure. Why
we
not?
have a yeah, why not, right? So we have the space. We've been granted the space by the church. It's an attic in the building that was in front of Carpenter's Workshop, an old Victorian. So it's a full attic with a steep gables on the sides.
Mm.
Uh, so we go up there, and the first thing we do is kill about 1,000 wasps. I'm not
Oh
exaggerating. They are literally
gosh.
they owned the place for 100 years, and now we're going up there, and so we have to wire it, and the town inspector allowed us to work under the license, knowingly under the license of a licensed electrician, but we did all the work.
Mm.
And Bobby, the electrician, would come by and just check now and again to make sure we weren't really screwing things up.
Hmm.
Um, and he came in and he was fine with it. He was all for it. And we put the thing together. That was 1987, with the exception of a 2-year hiatus. And let me back up. I went into this thing with the intention of walking away from it when I was done. I had a ministry with the Carver's Workshop. I wanted no part of trying to run this or do this or anything, but I wanted it to happen as bad as Billy did.
Hmm.
And so we built it, and then I walked away from it, and it ran for a couple of years. Then it was uh, idle for a couple of years. The person that was running it that had the equipment, one day Billy goes up there and everything is gone. It's stripped out of the place. All the equipment is gone.
Oh
Even
my
some
God.
of Billy's equipment, it's gone. And the person who was running it was having difficulties and what have you, and pulled his stuff out. And it wasn't anything to do with us. He had some personal issues going on and pulled his stuff out, and that was it. For 2 years, it sat idle, and Billy wouldn't let it go. So Billy had run across somebody who was doing recording in his basement, really dank little basement.
Hmm.
And Billy says, no place for this. We have a place if you're interested. So sure enough, right now it's Abraham's Closet in Leicester. and it's been running, with the exception of those 2 years, since 1987.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, um, and I guess that's the message. You remember to break just for you don't have to shut things off. Just give me 1 second. So the message is like this: is you God calls you to do something, whether it's work with youth group, which we work with several of those, whether it's Carpenters Workshop, Coffee House, Cafe Candios, Cafe at the Mill, um, anything we're doing now and will do, building the recording studio. Let's just do it. Don't question it. Some things will work out, some things won't. We looked at doing a radio station back in the day, and it was not going to happen. God was
Hmm.
not in it. We're not trying to do this on our own, but the
Hmm.
confirmation that God was saying this is not for you to do
Yep,
it
yep.
was clear very quickly. We got not too far into it and realized this is just not where God wanted us to go, and we dropped it wisely rather than trying to do it on our own.
I think that's such an important takeaway right there because, even that's biblical. David wanted to build the temple for God, but God said, no, that's not for you to do.
Yeah,
This is
it's
this
for
is Solomon's job.
yeah someone
So
else's job.
it's somebody else's job. But if he's behind it, and that's what I'm always looking for is that confirmation. Is this just a wacky harebrained idea of mine? Or God, is this you? And it's crazy, but what you want to do. Um, where's that confirmation? And you always have to be prepared to either go ahead or stop based on what you get.
Oh yeah.
This podcast is a perfect example. I had this crazy thought while I was hosting an online concert for Red's Room. I should do a podcast because I want to talk to this person longer than the 20 minutes I have with them. Okay, start really thinking about it. How am I going to do that? I did that, almost talk myself out of it. Joe, who was my first crazy stopper, he's like, yeah, no, do it. It sounds like a great idea. But he didn't really know how to do it either. I was trying to think of a couple of ways, and I am not tech savvy at all. You want me nowhere near computer
Thank you. Me
equipment.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, this is why we have Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Our intrepid producer. Um, you just don't want me in charge of anything tech. So turns out, I'm talking a couple weeks later with Joe Neal, who runs Christian Ministry Spotlight, and I'm just like, hey, I had this crazy thought, and I almost didn't even say anything to him. Hey, I had this crazy thought. What do you think about me doing a podcast? What are your thoughts on that? And he just starts going off, oh yeah, 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 yeah. And he starts saying, you can do it on this platform or that platform. You can use this program and do this and that and the other thing. And at this point, my eyes are glazing over,
I can
like,
see it already. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
And, and then he's like, well, if you go on Spotify, you can see the Christian, we have a Spotify page. And I go on Spotify, and sure enough, there's a podcast page. And he's like, yeah, we did it for a while, and I haven't had time to do it. So, maybe you just take over our podcast. And I'm like, that right there.
Yeah. There's some confirmation for you. Yeah.
That's the confirmation. And it turns out it had been weighing on his heart for the last couple of weeks too. It's like, man, I got to do these podcasts, but I don't know how I'm going to have the time to do these podcasts because, we've now been talking for a little over 2 hours and he doesn't have that kind of time, but I do.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
And so, but if God hadn't been in it and God hadn't provided those confirmations, then like you said, you just okay, this was my crazy thought and probably shouldn't happen. You might be able to get it off the ground. You probably could have gotten a radio station off the ground. But if God wasn't behind it, it wasn't going to do what you imagined it was going to do.
Yeah.
And it would have detracted from what God wanted you to be doing.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So,
No, that's the one thing that we tried to put the ministry first, and that meant, sacrifice throughout the years, which took the form, and I know musicians who can relate to this, it took the form of not taking the big job,
hmm
even though I did have, by default, I ended up with the big job. Um, but not, it worked out well in that respect. It was a lot, but it could have been much more unmanageable.
hmm
But there were times when I said, no, I'm not taking this job. Twice a college um, job that I just turned down. It was just, I thought about the money. I could, although the money would be great, but it was going to eat my life, and it would have impacted Carpenter's Workshop Coffee House. I will say this: I wish you had been around for Carpenter's Workshop Coffee House. God did some amazing things there.
Me too.
Um,
The
he
story,
really
my
did. He
goodness.
he really truly did some incredible things. Set the stage for everything else uh, moving forward with music ministry. I know people are probably wanting to hear more about the coffee houses, but um, I really want to just first take an opportunity to thank all the musicians who stuck with us through thick and thin. Through for 29 years, we overall run the three coffee houses. Um, some of which I'm still in contact with,
hmm
and you know I can't thank them enough for being with us all those years and doing what God's called them to do, and that includes you. And of course, the staff that I had over the years, I can't thank them enough for sticking it out in the tough times and riding the wave when it was great, and my wife, who has, through thick and thin, been with me in these. And I will tell you, she had the least glamorous job, the cooking and cleaning, basically.
Yeah.
But that the coffee house would never have happened. She did a lot of the advertising, paperwork. Without that, I'm great for, hey, let's do this thing. But when it comes to, maybe the paperwork part of it,
Yeah.
not so much. I would write
Same.
stories back in the day and longhand, and my typing skills are, I get up to like 20 words a minute. That's been my best keyboarding ever. Um, she in her best,
Not that great.
in her best day, what were you, 95 words a minute? Something like she's modest, something like 95 words a minute with 100% accuracy. Um, I just remember back in the day when her computers were more in their infancy, she would be typing and the words would be following her.
Yeah. Yeah.
All you ladder of keys, and then the words would come across the screen like this.
Yep.
She
Yeah.
could
My
type.
mom was the same way. She was a secretary for years, and her typing skills were impeccable. And yeah, we had the same type of thing where it was she actually started with an electric typewriter,
Oh
and
yeah, Lucille's nodding.
yeah, you could see the little printout as you're typing, and she would get going with it, and then she'd stop, and the typewriter just keep going
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
just faster
Lucille
than
did that with, yeah, and I'm sure your mom did with a computer screen too. Saw that in the 286s and 486s and all them.
yep,
They
yep.
the early computers. Um, it is for people like your mom and Lucille that they made the QWERTY keyboard. That keyboard exists because in the early days, typewriters, if they tried to do it alphabetically, the keys would jam. So they
Mm,
developed what they call the QWERTY, which is if you look at your top row, you've got QWERTY,
yep,
and that's known as a QWERTY keyboard. It was known as a QWERTY keyboard.
yep.
Yeah, so
And it's
Lucille's been
based
with
on
me
the
through
frequency of the letters.
the letters, yeah,
Yep,
and the likelihood they'll be typed together or typed, in subsequent order.
yep.
So the coffee houses were great, great opportunities to meet people from all over the world, all over the country, all over the world, to hear people with amazing testimonies about what God had done
hmm
in their lives, to meet people that are kindred spirits, and people that just you sit there and go, yeah, you too. You shouldn't be in the kingdom either, but here we are. Um, yeah. And then other people who were born and raised in the church and no other life, and but they love the Lord, and it's like, wow, I envy you. I envy you not dragging that baggage behind you. You know, I truly do.
But
But
God, God
yeah,
loves a good redemption story.
oh yeah,
It's awesome when you can look at, somebody who, like you said, you shouldn't be here, and yet look at what God did. And it's that but God statement. But God did this, but God did that. And you can give all of that glory back to him. You know, and it's always fun to hear, because I don't think I've come across a person in ministry who could say, "Oh yeah, yeah, God, I feel like I was born for this." I don't think there exists one. He chooses the least likely.
yeah.
Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Um, and he equips the called. He doesn't call the equipped. You know, I've told the story many times that, for me to take a stage, and it was one thing with a band, but to take a stage solo, that's not me. That's not my personality.
Not me either, actually. Really
I'm the
isn't.
geek in the back with the book.
Yeah.
No, don't notice me. Please do not perceive
Oh,
me.
first two times is terrifying. You get used to it after a while, but the first few
Right.
times is terrifying.
Yes.
I did. I was asked to at Episcopal Church to give the St. Mark's Day sermon. We were familiar
Okay.
with this particular pastor in town, and I don't know where I don't know where it came from, and he must have heard me talk it. Well, this is before Carver's Workshop College, so I don't know where he got the idea I was going to do this, but he asked me to do the St. Mark's sermon. Well, talk about quaking in my kids. My first public sermon ever. Probably my first whole sermon public ever, but yeah, yeah, not me. I'm up there going, you idiot, why are you doing this? But, I guess it was God saying, all right, and we're gonna rip the Band-Aid off.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. He
yeah.
likes to take you right up to the edge of your comfort zone and
Oh yeah.
shove you off the cliff.
Well,
Like,
he
yep,
did
you're
that.
comfortable in this. Guess what? You're going further.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Going further.
Look at this. See what you're gonna do here. And
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Have fun.
yeah, have fun. Yeah. Yeah. Have fun storming the castle.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it exactly.
That's one of our favorite things. Have fun storming the castle.
Yes.
Uh,
You think they'll make it? It'll take a miracle.
it'll be a miracle.
It's
That's what
a
it's all
miracle.
about. It's all
Any of
about
this.
God's little miracles.
Yes, yes. And you take it back to what we were saying before. God, if he has work to be done, he's going to do it. He doesn't need us. But wow, what an honor and a privilege and a blessing it is when we're able to join him in his work.
Oh,
And
amen.
you doing the coffee houses, me and the ministries that he's put me in, it's just it's a blessing. It's a blessing. So when you look at those opportunities that may have given, the earthly rewards, the Bible also says, okay, yeah, you have your reward. You have your reward. But you can look at, okay, but I'm doing what God asked me to do. And yes, that earthly reward, I didn't get that. But oh my goodness, the kingdom reward.
And
The,
sometimes you get a little bit of both. You get to see a little
yeah.
bit of the other side. If
Yeah,
I can
he doesn't
share,
hold back, does he?
oh no, no. Sometimes you get to see it without being in a place where you're going to lose your crown, so to speak. I'm going to give you a picture. God's saying, I'm going to give you a picture of this. Some years back, I told you about some of the things that would happen. Carver's Workshop Coffee House. We had the Boston Church of Christ decide that you're familiar with them? They're
No.
cult. Kip McKean's Boston Church of Christ, and they show up as maybe Bristol Church of Christ or Hartford Church of Christ or whatever.
Hmm.
So they have this local branch apparently, and they show up one night and they don't really announce themselves, but they're talking. They always find the leader. That's kind of the thing. So somebody comes up to me and woman starts talking to me, young woman, and they've come as a group, and they clearly have never been there before. So we start to talk with them, and I ascertained that they're from the Boston Church of Christ. I said, well, you can come and all, but you can't be proselytizing or inviting people to Bible studies or dinners or anything like that. I said, if I see
Hmm.
you do that, you're gone. You'll be gone for good. So they agreed to that. With them was this young woman, and she just seemed troubled all the time. We would talk to them from time to time, and this girl, um, give me a minute, I'll remember her name. Anyway, she would come, and this is like 30 years ago, so forgive me if I'm losing some detail. Um, so Chris was her name. And so one night we said we were playing volleyball regularly on Monday nights at the school. And we said, hey, if you ever want to come out and play volleyball with us, we'll play every Monday night. Well, sure enough, she shows up, which is
Hmm.
really weird because usually they have somebody that's glued to them. They have this
Hmm.
discipler that eats, breathes with them, sleeps with them, or not sleeps with them, but you know what I mean. That
Yeah.
moves with them, tells them when they can go out on dates. I mean, it's really pretty controlling. But
Yeah.
she shows up. Great. And she keeps coming and keeps coming. This story isn't about us. You'll see why in a minute. So it's great. We think this is wonderful. She keeps coming to cafe, sometimes without her Boston Church Christ friends, which is kind of weird. But she'd come with a roommate,
Mhm.
whose name I'll call her Dorothy. I actually do not remember her name, and I'm just going to call her Dorothy. It seems to be the name that comes to me. And so all of a sudden, we don't see her ever again. Now, this is pre-cell phone, so we don't have a phone number or anything for her.
Mhm.
Just pre-cell phone, but it's pre-cell phone. And that's it. We never see her again. Well, apparently the last night she was there was this young woman, a singer, who at best she was a decent performer, but she was tiny. Her guitar was bigger than she was. She had a kind of a small voice. You really had to boost her,
Mhm.
and she was good, but not riveting. And
Okay.
I'm just trying to set the stage, the expectation here. So I would say not a super strong performer,
Mhm.
but nonetheless lovely and proficient and all the things you would want. Beautiful little voice. So in all of this, this musician had we kind of talked here every so often, maybe a couple of months. We would talk, and she'd call me or I'd call her to see how she's doing. She lived far, kind of far away from us. So she calls me up one time and tells me that her husband's divorcing her. So this is in amidst all this time frame where we haven't seen this Chris.
Mhm.
So Carolyn tells me, this musician tells me her husband's divorcing her, and she's all broken up. So we talk a little bit. I pray with her. We pray, and that's not the story. A while later, she calls me up, and she said, I asked her, she goes, she's doing better. She's getting through the divorce thing, and she says, oh, she says, you remember Chris? I said, yeah, I haven't seen her in a long time. She said, oh, she's down here living with me and going to church with me. Okay. Now I have not made this connection, so my head's like, how'd that happen? I've not
Uh-huh.
made the connection that Chris just kind of forgot that she'd been there when Carolyn was singing. And then she says, oh, you remember her roommate? We'll call her Dorothy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember Dorothy. I'm waiting to see what happens next. She says, oh, she's down here living with me too. And we're going to church. She's taken these two women in from the Boston Church of Christ. She hasn't ripped them out. These women have gone by their own volition,
Uh-huh.
um, left the Boston Church of Christ. Apparently, the night that Carolyn played, must have got into a conversation with these two. I did not, I must have been busy. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Do not have no memory of it whatsoever. Had nothing to do with it. Um, God did. And this is a story for musicians. Apparently, they made a connection. Apparently, I was kind of clear Chris was having trouble with the Boston Church of Christ, but um, apparently they made a connection. And Chris and Carolyn had the house because her husband divorced her and left, and invited Chris and her roommate to come live in the house with her and go to church with her, and was discipling them.
Wow. That
I want to make this clear. The reason I said that she's not a super strong performer is to underscore the fact that, and I don't mean to be unkind. Don't take this way. It's not like you think, oh, Raging Grace, they got the whole audience is swooning, and so it takes this person who is she's lovely, she's compassionate, she's everything you'd ever want. Um, but it takes that person to be sincere, to be willing to do whatever God calls her to do, to get down with the audience
Mhm.
and talk to somebody on a one-to-one level, and God accomplishes these miracles. And the reason I say that is because when people ask, well, what's the criteria for booking people at the cafe? She's the criteria for what we're booking at cafe. You're the criteria. Somebody who's not willing, afraid to get off the stage and talk to people during the break or after the concert, and
Yeah.
not go off in the green room or whatever, and because I'm
I
so great. And so the musical talent is important to a degree, but don't ever, and this is a message for musicians and coffee house directors, don't ever think that that's so special that it trumps your being called to get off the stage and mix with the crowd,
yeah.
and your work's not done after your first set, your work's not done after your second set. That's the criteria we use to book people for the cafes. And that's what I think God called us to do. I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to say anything more, but that's what I think God called us to do.
I think that's a great place to leave it with.
Yeah.
You just you try to obey, you try to do what God leads you to, and you have to let God do the rest.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you just it's like you're just there to facilitate.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. We're there to facilitate. We're there to do what we know to do as best that we know to do it, and
Yeah.
be obedient, which is, I guess, when you are, if you are, when you are, that's when God um, says, "Hey, build a recording studio." Okay, sure, why not? Let's get a box and fly to the moon, right?
Right. Right.
Pretty much.
Plug
This
that
is when
recording studio again, just so people can hear it again.
Abraham's Closet
Abraham's Closet. What a
in
great name.
Leicester, Massachusetts. Um, Still there, still there. Of course, they've done some other work, to over the years, they've refined it and everything, but yeah, it's still there. Okay, and, God bless them. And I mean that sincerely. God bless them. It's quite a testimony to me, the stick-to-itiveness of that whole affair.
Hmm.
And the person that did it for so many years, people that did it for so many years were part-time, and now he's full-time.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and if you work full-time and you have a ministry that's involving, then you know the strain that can put on you and your family.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's it can't be underscored that, yeah, that's something that. So pray for your ministries, pray for your minister, pray for your pastor, who seems to have it all together up on stage. Newsflash, he does not.
He does not. Yep.
And they'll tell you that if they're honest. Mine does.
Yep.
Um, I guess the beauty of this too is that, if you're going to be a ministry and you be plugged into a solid fellowship, a solid church,
Mhm.
um, it doesn't always work out, as we all have seen. We can tend to from time to time say, "Wow, this is not what we signed up for."
Mhm.
Having a solid base and a church that prays for you. Um, we're just getting involved in this church here in Inverness. We've been going about 6, 7 months now. Um, our toes in the water because very busy here at the house.
Yeah.
But um, when the time comes, we are going to be more involved with the church and more involved with the ministries. So right now, I'm kind of kicking some doors and seeing if anybody is willing to have an artist come through now and again do special music. Keep that in prayer. See if that's what God's leading. I don't know. Not sure yet.
Well, I'm always looking for a reason to go to Florida. Just saying. Just saying.
Well, I have this. I can't guarantee the giant tour, but I'm going to reach out to a couple of contacts down here,
Mhm.
and um, but this one of the things, if y'all want to pray about this, and again, I can't let the name out. There's a series of camps, girls and boys, just so we're clear on what goes on.
Mhm.
But in the town that I lived in before, which is one town south from here, is a girls' camp. And oddly enough, my secular neighbors had introduced us to this camp where the girls come. It's kind of like teen and adult challenge,
Mhm.
adult and teen challenge, kind of like that. A little less scripturally based, but the founders were Christians.
Okay.
Anyway, we're right now testing the waters to see if they would like a private concert for the girls now and again. So a Christian concert for the girls now and again.
Mhm.
So I'm excited about that because, um, well, when you meet the girls, you're like, you can't believe they ever ended up there. They're like the girls next door, but they've been in some serious trouble and they're there for about a year.
Yeah.
And so you sit there, it breaks your heart. So you're like, okay, maybe this is the thing. Maybe this will work. We'll see. So anybody wants to keep that in prayer, um, I'd be open to that. And yes, if it goes well, you're going to have an excuse to come to Florida.
Yay.
You would do very well there. Girls would love you.
That's just yeah. I have a heart for, and for some reason I've always gotten along well with teenagers. Maybe it's because I'm just a big teenager. Um I'm
Good,
my
good.
Joe's grandmother used to have a bumper sticker. I'm not a senior citizen, I'm a recycled teenager.
There you go. I like
Yes.
that. I like
Yes.
that.
And even as a teenager, I was like, yes, I identify with that. So I think I'm just a kid at heart, but yeah, I also I don't know, there's something that God allows. We've had several of our kids' friends, come through our place, and some have even called it home for a while. It's something that I don't know. It's like you say, your heart just goes out to them. There's you're either you're either somebody that can relate or somebody that doesn't, and they know immediately whether or not they can talk to you. And for whatever reason, yeah, I don't know. That's not what this is
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Anyway,
No, but you're right. You've hit the nail on the head. Being authentic, being vulnerable.
yeah,
Um, these are things that we, as youth group leaders, I made the promise to kids, I won't lie to you. You can
yeah,
ask me anything, I will not lie to you. I will not necessarily give you all the gory details, mind you, but I will not lie to you.
right.
Um,
Oh
and you can
yeah, they
tell,
know immediately. They
oh yeah,
know
I
immediately.
didn't inhale. Yes, I did.
Yeah,
I
right.
most certainly
Why are you
did.
smoking in the first place?
Yeah. So don't, you can't.
It's
That's the
not
first
for
part.
the pleasant aroma.
Yeah, exactly. The questions that one of the first few questions they ask you, and I'm gonna give me 1 second. I'll be right back. I want to share something with you. I think you get a kick. So as youth groups, they would ask you the questions. Did you do drugs? Did you drink? Did you whatever? Um, and so yeah, you'd say yes. And so one night in the one of the larger youth groups, we were coaches in. We weren't the leaders. It was a youth pastor and his wife, but we were the whatever their assistants, whatever you want to call those coaches.
Mhm.
So they decide that the girls should break off with Lucille and the guys should break off with me. And we'd have this is the night of let's cut the crap. This is the conversation. This is the honest conversation. Ask me anything you want, and I won't lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
So they asked me the standard questions. Yes, I did. I did drugs. Yes, I drank. Yes. And you got kids there that are not Christians. We've already did the Dr. D. James Kennedy's 2 questions. Are you familiar with Evangelism Explosion?
No.
It was big in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s, and it was valuable at the time. I think it still can be used. You just have to really modify it to today's um, landscape. The 2 questions that he asks, in fact, you get a pin that has 2 question marks on it if you feel like you want to wear that so people ask you questions. And the 2 questions are this. If you were to die tonight, are you certain that you would enter heaven? The second question is, these are diagnostic questions, and believe me, they're deadly accurate.
Mm-hmm.
If God were to ask you, why should I let you into my kingdom? On what criteria should I let you into my kingdom? What would your answer be?
Mm.
And the first question is um, assurance of salvation. The second question is reason for salvation. So a lot of people say, "Oh, yes, I'm sure, that I go to heaven." A lot of times, sometimes you get the answer no on both of them, but then you get the second question, and that would be, "Because I'm a good person," all the standard wrong
Yeah.
answers.
I've
And this
never tried any of
diagnoses
those.
whether or not you're dealing with a Christian, whether you're dealing with a Christian that sometimes you get the answer that says yes, and then they give you the answer, oh, because Jesus died for my sins, and then they say, but I'm not sure, if I'm doing things right or whatever. So you get people who sometimes question their salvation because they don't have a good grounding or they're young. These 2 questions will nail whether or not you're dealing with a Christian or not. They are guaranteed that every single time it will nail it for the 2 reasons.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. I've heard the first one. I hadn't heard the second one.
And so when we were dealing with these kids, the youth pastor and his wife, God bless them, they're great people, they're wonderful Christians, but they kind of had the assumption all these kids were saved. And I said one time to them, I said, and we both said they're not. You've got so many kids here that are no idea. They're here, they're mouthing the words, they do not know.
Yeah.
And they kind of didn't believe us. I said, well, pose the 2 questions. They can be anonymous. Will be anonymous, but pose the 2 questions, give them the 2 questions, and then have them write the answers, and then we'll go through the answers. And they were shocked at the
Yeah.
answers. Um, so we broke off with the boys, and she broke off with the girls. I broke off with the boys. And then I made the statement about this. I said, so many of the kids that I grew up with are no longer alive. Um, my first long-term relationship, um, she had gone to a party. I don't really know all the details, but she had fell asleep behind the wheel of a car coming back from the party and slammed in the back of a truck and was killed instantly. I mean, these are things that and I told the kids, I said, all the things I tell you, the gory stories, but the fact remains that you shouldn't be surprised when these things happen. If you're not walking with the Lord, be surprised when they don't happen.
Mm.
And so you asked me about this, what it was like before I came to Christ, and I tell you, it was not a pleasant place. It was not a place you want to be. The world is not your friend. Um, this is not some place you want to find yourself. You need to understand that there are powers and principalities that you cannot see, that I cannot see, that are fighting for you. This is not a good thing. This is not a good thing. There are certainly God and his angels are on your side, but there are powers that are fighting against you. And this war is not yours to fight. This is a war that Christ already won, and we need to put on that armor, but we also need to be in the camp.
Mhm.
You can't be outside the camp and fight your own battle. You'll be killed. In modern terms, it's outside the wire. You're not outside the wire. You're outside the wire by yourself. You're assuredly going to be killed.
Mhm.
You need to be in camp. You need to be with your troop, as it were. You need to be fully armored and understand that out there beyond the wire, which is the world, you're a target. or the powers and principalities that may be. And so once again, we circle back to prayer. When you're blessed with an opportunity to work with youth, it's an opportunity to pray for them. It's an opportunity to pray for them because, like they prayed for me, this may be the only real leverage that you have in their life.
Yeah.
And so, whether it's coffee house and you look at the audience out there, and some people they come in and they try to treat it like church. We try to tell them, not everybody here is saved. Not everybody here knows the Lord. You've got to there's an aspect of this you got to realize when you're doing your thing, that you may be the first person they ever heard that sang like this or said these things. And you need to pray for your audience. So the musicians need to pray for their audience. The coffee house directors need to pray for their audience on a very real level. And if you're a youth group leader, you got to pray for your youth on a real level. And above all, whoever you are out there in ministry, you've got to be real and transparent. Sometimes it's scary.
I think that is, I think that just sums it all up, and I think that's the perfect place to wrap this up. We will have to, it has been such a pleasure talking
Oh,
with you.
likewise.
We're gonna have to do this again because we didn't get into any of the crazy stories of the coffee houses.
Oh,
We did a
except
bait
for
and
some that
switch here.
God bless him.
Bait, bit of a bait and switch, but yeah, we'll definitely have to do this again and get into some of those
Yeah,
crazy stories
I'll be
because
glad to. I'll be glad
yeah.
to.
Just one more thing before we go. If anyone is thinking about starting this kind of a ministry, this coffee house ministry, what would your words of wisdom be for them as someone who's been doing this for multiple decades?
Well, aside of the nuts and bolts that go along with the equipment, the space, which you need to have the space donated. You can't, I don't think you sustain a coffee house if you're paying rent. That would be a very difficult thing to do. Maybe in Nashville, you can, maybe in bigger, maybe in bigger municipalities. Let's leave it at that. It may be possible. Um, a conducive space for it. But really the thing is, if you feel like God's calling you to pray about it, and then just go do it. There are plenty of bands out there. Once you get rolling, you'll find. And my biggest thing about this is, again, authenticity. The people that play should be people who really are Christ centered and ministry centered. The kind of people who don't care whether there's 10 or 1,000 people out there, and keep it. You can't just have people you like. You need to stretch your audience. You need to allow people who are truly gifted and called to ministry to play your coffee house. And you might get pushback from the church leaders. I did. And be prepared to stand your ground with real, with just prepared to stand your ground with godly principles and maybe some, I don't know, some evidence of their ministry. But it's a great thing. It's a wonderful ministry. It's a tiring ministry. It's a full-time ministry on top of your job. Just keep that in mind. You don't just get to go home at night. Um, as I said, it's the phone calls from people like Carolyn when they're going through a divorce that they didn't initiate and their
Mhm.
life has been turned upside down. The calls from someone you hardly know or never, almost don't really know because their husband is divorcing them. The husband was a musician.
Mm.
You get a call from the wife who you met twice, and she is confiding in you because
There's got no one else.
apparently, and trust you for whatever reason. And I would normally would not have that conversation with a woman, except that the proximity and distance assures me and should assure everybody else that there's going to be no, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No
Yeah,
entanglements.
yeah, no entanglements. Um, but you need to take those phone calls. And if you feel like you have to turn them over to your wife, or husband, depending on the situation, that's fine too, or have them in on the conversation. But you get these you'll get these calls. These things will happen, and you will have to be say some quick prayers because you're unarmed for those conversations.
Mm,
So that's what happens on the side when you're not on stage and the lights go out and nobody sees you in your home and your phone rings
mhm,
and somebody's life is completely been blown apart and you are the person that for some reason they trust and then you have to be trustworthy.
mm.
I guess I can leave it with that.
Things you never think about.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending the time and
Oh, you're very
having this
welcome.
conversation. This has been a blast. I've known you for over a decade, and some of these stories I'd never heard before. I love it. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Lucille
Uh,
and I love you and Joe very much. You know that.